How do we develop that so in 10 years we're actually ready to take on those challenges when we have our first development in the water? NJIT also has been doing a lot of work in self-healing materials, so taking the polymers and the new material that we have in our material sciences departments and putting them into things like concrete, things like steel, reinforcing our soil.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
Not completing high school is more of a social thing than it was an academic thing. I came out in the 11th grade. Nobody was embracing you. The kids were cruel. It was very difficult to be gay. Even though all these years have passed, I still had that longing to have my diploma. The hard part was determining that I was going to do it, but I definitely didn't do it alone.
At age 30, with the help of her mentor, Carissa finished her high school diploma.
I have a mentor, Maria. She convinced me to continue my education and to finish what I started to get my diploma. Just never judges. She's a true role model. If you're even considering getting your high school diploma, go get it. You can do it.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. That's finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
This is a Bloomberg Pursuit. Be part of the college sports conversation on TuneIn. Hear the latest storylines around SEC football with the Paul Feinbaum Show.
I distinctly remember when you were hired, and I must say most of us thought you were out of your mind, giving up. I wouldn't call it a cush job because you were traveling across the country.
Get your college hoops fix with college basketball talk on NBC Sports.
Headed by Shabazz Napier, that also included Amita Brima, who is in and around the NBA ranks right now, and DeAndre Daniels, who was the 37th pick in the 2014 NBA draft. So my question to you is,
or listen to the daily news from around the wide world of college football with College Football Live.
I would go with Utah. I think Utah is the better team. And I know I'm talking to an Oklahoma guy, but listen, and it may be recency bias having watched Utah last week and doing that game, but I just think they're a more complete football.
Discover these and more college sports podcasts right here on TuneIn. The moves may be choreographed, but the drama is real.
I dare you! I beg you to come down here right now!
Stay on top of everything happening in the pro wrestling universe with the Body Slamming podcasts on TuneIn. For passionate recaps of the most recent SmackDown, check out the What's Wrong with Wrestling show. And for a pro wrestler's perspective on life and culture at large, listen to Talk is Jericho. For these and more podcasts, search sports and scroll down to the world of wrestling. Stay on top of everything happening in the pro wrestling universe with the Body Slamming podcasts on TuneIn. For passionate recaps of the most recent SmackDown to a pro wrestler's perspective on life and culture at large, search sports and scroll down to the world of wrestling to listen. Get your MLB fix with these great podcasts on TuneIn. Fill your seventh inning stretch with the Ringer MLB Show.
I just can't get over it. It's like, oh, well, Jeter Downs. Didn't realize he was a top. Like, my dad is drinking the Kool-Aid on this. He's like,
of course.
Mookie was going to leave. I'm like, what do you mean? You don't know that.
Slide into second with the Starting Nine podcast.
Nolan Arenado slides right into the top spot for a favorite baseball player. Active in the league right now. It is a pleasure to be sitting next to you, sir.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. Thank you.
This is we've been waiting a long time for this. We actually, in terms of like active
round the bases with the Statcast podcast.
Ways of going about it. I picked third, so in some ways it made it easier for me. Mike just to go over the first couple of picks. Mike took Barry Bonds, who I think was kind of the obvious guy to take number one. Not only
catch these and more MLB podcasts right here on TuneIn.
Financial information 24 hours a day. Powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. This is Bloomberg Radio. Now, a global news update.
Special report, coronavirus update. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi announces the Democratic lineup for the new Coronavirus Oversight Committee. It includes House Majority Whip Jim Clyburn as the chairman.
Chairman Clyburn says he's looking forward to working with all the members, including the Republicans on the committee. But so far, House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy has not named any. There are questions about whether he will do so. McCarthy has been critical of the committee, saying, quoting here, "The roster the Speaker has chosen makes clear this is not an honest effort at transparency and accountability, but rather an attempt to politically damage the Trump administration."
There's Linda Kenyon. 30 days to slow the spread. The federal government's social distancing guidelines expire today. President Trump says he's not extending them. The president is planning his first long trip in weeks with a visit next week to Arizona. I'm John Trout.
Tom Keene and Jonathan Farrell.
Is that good for American finance? What is happening with the headcount?
Right, where it counts. Bloomberg Surveillance, weekday mornings at 7 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio. Bloomberg, the world is listening. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. U.S. stock index futures are mixed right now as investors weigh corporate results and signs of progress in treating the coronavirus alongside some miserable economic data. Oil futures continue to rebound after an early week tumble. Taking a look at NASDAQ futures, they're rising following strong results from Microsoft, Facebook, and Tesla after the close. They're up about 27 points. S&P futures, they're lower, down 3, while Dow futures are up 26. The DAX in Germany is down about 0.2%. 10-year Treasury up 5/30 seconds, yield 0.60%. The yield on the 2-year 0.18%. NYMEX crude oil up 16%, up $2.44 at $17.50 a barrel. And COMEX gold is up 0.9% or $15.40 at $17.28.90 an ounce. The euro 1.0879 against the dollar. British pound 1.2505, and the yen is at 106.63. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now here's Michael Barr with more on what's going on around the world. Michael.
Karen, the federal government's social distancing guidelines are expiring, and President Donald Trump says he's not extending them. More than 60,000 deaths in the U.S. have been attributed to the coronavirus. President Trump says that he expects to visit Arizona next week as the administration forges ahead with its effort to urge states to reopen their economies. According to a White House spokesman, the president will tour a Honeywell plant in Phoenix next Tuesday. In Washington State, Governor Jay Inslee says elective surgeries can now resume. Stay-at-home orders still remain in place. Germany's health minister has warned against significantly relaxing restrictions imposed to curb coronavirus infections. Jens Spahn says in an op-ed today that it could recklessly endanger the country's achievements in fighting the pandemic. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. Powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg, Nathan.
Michael, thank you. We are live from the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studios. We're at 649 on Wall Street. Now time to check what's going on in D.C. Some of the top stories in the nation's capital include the Trump administration putting together a Manhattan Project-style effort to speed development of a coronavirus vaccine. President Trump preparing a plan to offer bridge loans to the oil industry during the pandemic. And this morning, Joe Biden announcing a panel that'll help him choose a running mate. Also making news, the president suggesting China misled the world on the coronavirus response because China wants to see him lose in November. Joining us now for more on all this, Kathleen Hunter, U.S. politics editor for Bloomberg News. This came out in a Reuters interview that the president gave and was published last night. What did the president say exactly about the Chinese response?
Well, essentially, this was the president kind of ratcheting up his criticism of China once again over the response, and this time tying it to his reelection, essentially suggesting that China wants to see someone else in the White House come January, and so therefore that, China had deliberately bungled its response to the coronavirus in an attempt to hurt Trump's reelection.
It sounds pretty similar to criticisms the president's given in the past to Democrats and even the media, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the president, there's no shortage of folks that the president has tried to, shift blame to in terms of the response to the coronavirus and how the coronavirus has impacted the U.S. And I think this is just kind of the latest example of that, or latest iteration of him looking to China.
When it comes to the chances for the president's reelection, it seems like he's putting a lot of hopes on Republican governors, particularly in the Midwest and the South, that are taking steps to reopen their economies. It's a pretty big gamble.
It definitely is a big gamble, and it could be the gamble that ends up, if it doesn't go well, really, becoming the thing that we can trace back to Trump's election loss if that does happen. I think that, it makes sense strategically for Trump in a way, partly because he doesn't really have another option. The coronavirus is going to be the issue that the election is decided on. And this gives him some political cover in the sense that, he is able to at least try to say if these reopenings in Republican-led states don't go well, at least try to say that it's the fault of how the governors handled it and not the fault of the federal government. Whether that, argument flies with voters, I think is an open question, especially given the degree to which the Trump administration has really left it up to states to decide how and when to reopen, and the degree to which Trump himself has suggested that states and, local governments should be up and running even more quickly than they are getting up and running. We have to remember at one point he suggested Easter as a reopening time. And so I think that, Trump's political fate is going to be very, very closely tied to how these first round of reopenings, go down, how they unfold.
And when it comes to reopening, we know the president is hinting that he's going to reopen his travel schedule probably as soon as next week with a trip to Arizona. What kind of heightened profile can we expect, not just from the president, but from Joe Biden?
Well, I think that, it's a delicate thing when it comes to this type of campaigning, both because of the continued restrictions that, medical professionals recommend for people in terms of social distancing, and also, whether or not, I think we'll have to, watch really closely the polls after Trump does take this trip next week. And, he also has a virtual town hall, a Fox News virtual town hall scheduled for Sunday. I think we'll have to look at the polling and see, whether that sort of gets his base riled up again, or whether, it probably will, or whether overall this leads to, voters potentially, I think there's a risk here that voters could end up with kind of a bad taste in their mouth with the idea that, that the president's out, sort of nakedly campaigning at a time when Americans are dying of a, deadly virus. There's a risk there that could backfire as well. And I think that that's the risk that Joe Biden has been very attuned to in terms of trying to keep a pretty low profile at this time, given that he's not the person in the White House. He's just the challenger. I think there's an even greater risk that he could come off as, as being, overly political at a time when voters aren't looking for that. And so I think that's why we've seen him keeping much more of a lower profile in recent weeks.
All right, Kathleen Hunter, thank you as always. That's Bloomberg U.S. Politics Editor Kathleen Hunter. Karen.
All right, Nathan, thank you. It is 6:53 on Wall Street. It's time now for the Bloomberg Small Business Report with John Tucker. John, good morning.
And good morning, Karen. Every day at this time, we're looking at small businesses struggling in the face of the COVID-19 pandemic. Today, we speak with a woman in charge of a New York City institution. Melanie Frost is Chief Operating Officer at Essa Bagel. The shop's known for its big, fat bagels with lines usually stretching around the block. That's not the case right now. To make up for the loss in storefront business, they're shipping bagels, partnering with online gourmet food store Goldbelly. Melanie, what was the initial fallout like when the stay-at-home orders were enacted?
80% of our revenue is down. I mean, literally, we went probably in 1 week from 60 to 160 catering orders a day. I mean, daily, weekly, monthly orders from a lot of corporations and so forth to zero. In terms of just retail, we used to have lines around the block. And today, I mean, we're lucky if there's 4 or 5, 6 people who come in, at a time. I also had to lay off over 35 employees. That's in one store. The other store, I laid off about 10 to 12. Now we're looking into some other things. We are very fortunate in the respect that we did have the line of business of shipping. That has actually expanded.
The shipping part of the business doesn't make up for the lost revenue from the overall business, but It is significant. Tell me how you pivoted to that.
So we had partnered with Goldbelly a couple of years ago. We had done some shipping, but quite frankly, beforehand, the shipping cost a lot more than the bagels themselves if you were shipping from California. So we're fortunate that people, from all over the country, we ship nationwide overnight, that have become really big fans. And it's just, I guess, expands. Goldbelly themselves are doing very well because, they have the top food purveyors. And I think it's much easier. You don't have to go anywhere. You can just get something overnight right in your home. And we just keep expanding like the different packages that we're offering. And we're actually looking into some other things. We're going to be doing the Essa Bagel Grocery, which is going to be starting next week.
What does that entail?
This is going to be where you can have your bagels, your spreads, all the things you love at a bagel, and then get your essentials like milk and eggs and toilet paper and masks and gloves and liquid soap and things like that. So your normal staples, vegetables, fruits, things that people need from the grocery, and while they're ordering their Bagel, then very easily they can just, I can just get that from Bagel. I don't have to worry about running to the supermarket or anything, and I can have it delivered.
Melanie Frost, the Chief Operating Officer at Bagel here in New York. Thanks, Melanie. We're going to continue bringing you stories of small businesses working to stay afloat during the coronavirus outbreak every day at this time, right here on Bloomberg Daybreak. I'm John Tucker. Let me tell you, Karen.
Yes,
these
John.
Bagels are awesome.
Now you're just making me jealous.
I'll save you one.
Thank you. I'll take it. All right, John, thank you. We're watching NASDAQ futures this morning. They're on the rise. This is following some strong results from Microsoft, Facebook, and Tesla after the close. Watching shares of Microsoft this morning, they're up 1.6%. Facebook shares are up 8.6%, and Tesla's up 8.4%. And NASDAQ futures are up 15 points. S&P futures lower. They're down 9 points, and Dow futures have turned lower, now down 28. The DAX in Germany is down 0.4%. The CAC in Paris down about 0.33%, and the FTSE 100 is down 1%. We are getting earnings from Lazard. First quarter profit missing analyst estimates. 10-year Treasury is up 6/32. The yield 0.60%. The yield on the 2-year 0.18%, and the 30-year yield 1.23%. NYMEX crude oil is up 15%, or $2.27. It's $17.33 a barrel. And COMEX gold is up 1%, or $16.40. It's $17.29.80 an ounce. The euro 1.0876 against the dollar. The yen 106.61. And Bloomberg Surveillance is straight ahead with Tom Keene, Jonathan Farrow, and Lisa Abramowitz. For Nathan Hager, I'm Karen Moscow, and this is Bloomberg.
Influential conversations from Bloomberg to...
I can find and fund my car, from a Mini to a Jaguar.
Feel good car buying from findandfundmycar.com is the place where you can find quality used cars from trusted dealers rated by you, and where you can fund your car with finance to fit your budget. It's feel good car buying all in one place.
Shouldn't be a carry on, choose findandfundmycar.com.
While most of us are looking out for each other at this time, sadly, fraudsters are trying to take advantage of the situation. Here's Chris Ainsley from Santander with advice for keeping your money safe.
Phishing emails are designed to trick you into giving away personal details. Messages might be about travel refunds, delivery tracking, or supermarket vouchers. Remember, never click on links or attachments in emails received out of the blue.
For more advice on keeping your money safe, visit santander.co.uk.
Max is dreaming of riding a giant chameleon whilst fighting a clan of ninjas. But in reality, he's helping fight COVID-19 in his sleep. Like thousands of others, he's joined the Dream Team. By using the Dream Lab app, they're helping scientists speed up the search for potential treatments.
I'll fight you.
You go, Max. Search Vodafone Dream Lab and join the Dream Team tonight.
DreamLab app is owned by Vodafone Foundation, an independent charity. Registration number 1089625. Full terms at vodafone.co.uk/dreamlab.
Make a call given the data.
Which segments of Alphabet's business are most likely to come under scrutiny?
Get all the pieces.
They're getting mixed signals from governments.
He's failed to gain traction.
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business, Radio.com, and iHeartRadio apps, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening. From the financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg Surveillance Economics.
Once we get through coronavirus, it's very supportive and very stimulative.
Central banks themselves got caught hostage by markets.
Finance.
OPEC Plus is at war with itself.
We know we can create America's energy independence again.
Investment.
The market's anticipating the rate getting very close to zero in fairly short order.
Volatility is back, so that's going to make for more cautious trading.
Bloomberg Surveillance with Tom Keene, Jonathan Farrow, and Lisa Abramowitz on Bloomberg Radio.
From New York City, for our audience worldwide, good morning, good morning. This is Bloomberg Surveillance. Coming up on the program, big tech earnings beating big expectations. President Lagarde in the spotlight as growth absolutely collapses, and bracing for 30 million jobless claims in just 6 weeks. From the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio, hello Thursday. Here is your Thursday morning price action as we wrap up a massive April, the month of April, on course for the biggest monthly gain on the S&P 500 going back to 1974. Your price action on the session today, this morning, we are negative 6 points on the S&P 500, down 0.2%. In the bond market, around about 90 minutes away from the data in America, yields come in at 2 basis points to 0.61% on a US 10-year. A quick snapshot of G10 and foreign exchange for you. The euro unchanged, and to round things out in the commodity market as follows. Crude all over the place over the last several weeks. Higher, much higher this morning to $17 and let's call it 50 cents, up by 15.7%. From New York City this morning, good morning. Alongside Tom Keene, I'm Jonathan Ferro. Together with Lisa Abramovich, you are listening to Bloomberg Surveillance live on Bloomberg Radio. Tom Keene, the spread between the economy, the economic data, and a market that has performed terrifically through the month of April.
Well, the market's performed terrifically. If you mentioned off the Goldman Sachs research, I think it's 8 stocks, John, and I don't own any of them, that have been a moonshot. What I see today, John, and this is absolutely critical, folks, you've got the set of economic data that we'll talk about here, and the x-axis today, John, has moved out. Carl Riccadonna's note was the note of the morning. All of a sudden, it's not about 2021. It's about 2022 and out to 2023.
The data in 2020, absolutely brutal as we work our way through the month of April. The data from March into April, terrible. The market performing terrifically. There are many reasons for this. Here's one. The market is not the economy. The S&P 500 is not the economy. It is made up of several stocks which absolutely dominate it. And Lisa, those several stocks, the earnings absolutely terrific. Let me just read you one line from Microsoft. The standout line for me from their earnings release. In the third quarter of fiscal year 2020, COVID-19 had minimal net impact on the total company revenue. Amazing.
It's probably the only one that can say that, given the absolute economic carnage that we've seen from the pandemic. Facebook also, a lot of people expecting their advertising revenue to plunge and for them to take a sort of somber tone, and yet they said that they actually are seeing an evening out of ad demand, which just sort of highlights to me the power that these companies have when every eyeball is glued to a screen, regardless of the broader economy.
Flat is the new growth, Tom Keene. For the month of April, as Lisa points out, for Facebook, the first 3 weeks, advertising revenue has been approximately flat compared to the same period a year ago. Not many companies, Tom, can say that about the first 3 weeks of April.
Yeah, these are tech juggernauts, and we're going to have some good conversations on this today. And of course, driving to Apple this afternoon, John. To me, what's absolutely extraordinary here are the layoffs. I'm going to go back to a cardinal rule, which is all politics is about jobs. Every single politician right now, look at France, economic growth back to 1949. They're all going to be focused on jobs.
Initial jobless claims in focus, 8:30 Eastern, right here on Bloomberg
I forgot
Radio.
About that. Yeah.
Your estimate, negative 3.5 million, or rather positive 3.5 million. Let's catch up with Ashok Balia, shall we? Our first guest of the morning, joining us from Neuberger Berman, the Deputy CIO of Fixed Income. Ashok, fantastic to get you with us on the program. Chairman Powell behind us, President Lagarde in front, around about 90 minutes away from that news conference. What are you looking for today, Ashok?
I think, you guys were talking about the data, so I was expecting, more weak data in the U.S. We've seen some weak data, retail sales, GDP figures out of Europe this morning. I think we're a little bit more optimistic that the ECB can have a bit of a positive surprise for the market. Don't think they're going to cut rates. I think it's more likely than the market seems to price this morning that they'll expand the emergency purchase program that they implemented, about a month ago. And I think the market's expecting them to sort of follow the Fed's model of being on hold here, policy-wise. And we think there's a little bit better chance that they are going to act. And the reason for that is the really weak data, the divergences you're seeing between North and South European data, and a little bit of a bridge until the fiscal authorities can meet in early May and hopefully wrap something up there.
Ishak, you said that the ECB will probably follow the Fed. So let's talk about what the Fed did yesterday with Jay Powell giving a press conference. They basically announced nothing. All they did was basically not push back against market expectations that they will do what it takes to support market functioning, is what they said, but it's being taken as market valuations. And I'm wondering, the power of communication. Did we learn anything else substantial from the Federal Reserve yesterday?
No, I don't think we did. I think your summary is exactly right. But I think that speaks to just how powerful the Fed acted in March and early April, and the market is willing to give the Fed the benefit of the doubt. I think Powell's message on all of this stimulus that the Fed has put in place is, the Treasury agency mortgage purchase programs are working well, and we're standing up the corporate purchase programs, and we need a few more weeks, and they're going to start getting going in April. And I think the Fed has built up sufficient credibility that the market is more than willing to look through a few weeks to a month of getting all of those facilities up and running. And on your question of valuations, I think the Fed has got to be pretty happy with where credit spread valuations are. I mean, high yield spreads peaked at 1,100, back around the 700 level. So, they haven't certainly gotten the same effect that we seem to see in the equity market, but it's been powerful.
Ashok, what's issuance going to be? I mean, I usually don't pay much attention to issuance. I just don't care. But guess what? I care right now. Are we going to see just a ton of bond issuance from full faith and credit out to the garbage?
Yeah, I mean, you've certainly seen a big uptick in investment grade issuance the last few weeks, and it's been extremely well absorbed as I think, investors are recognizing the Fed's support for the market in investment grade credit. That's going to continue. I mean, the theme of corporations shoring up balance sheets, raising capital. I mean, you've seen the banks issuing, more debt to raise capital, term out facilities in the high yield area. That's going to be an increasing theme as well. So, yeah, I think, you've seen it, and it's going to continue as companies use this window, and it could be a long window of low interest rates, relatively stable credit spreads to modify balance sheets for the new environment.
We had $400 billion worth of IG issuance over the last 6 weeks coming into this week. It's been absolutely remarkable. What's been equally remarkable, Ashok, is that the Federal Reserve hasn't actually bought any high-yield debt whatsoever. These corporate credit facilities aren't ready to go. And I was sat there yesterday in the news conference, and I just thought, this really reminds me of 2012 in Europe, where President Draghi came out with this unlimited bond buying program, OMT, and never had to activate the facility. Didn't have to buy a single bond with it. And it was just the announcement effect. And that was actually something that Chairman Powell acknowledged yesterday, the announcement effect that really got this market functioning. From your perspective, Ashok, just how big will the Fed's presence be, its actual real presence be in the corporate bond market?
I suspect the Fed's presence is going to be a little less than maybe we think. And first of all, I think the Fed is going to buy some corporate bonds. They're going to put down a marker that they can do it, and they will do it. But the second thing is, I think the Fed's, if we have this conversation 12 months from now, I don't think the Fed wants to be viewed as a competitor for private sector investments. And the flip side of Fed support in the corporate bond market is the Fed's got the potential to be a competitor of buying investment grade credit and taking away income in a world where Fed policy rates are going to be zero. And that's a balancing act. The private sector needs income, pension funds need income, and to the extent the Fed pushes spreads too low or takes down too much of the issuance and outstanding fixed income securities, that's got potential to create more problems. So I think the Fed's going to do a little bit, and then I think they're going to hope that they don't have to buy a ton. And like you said, the announcement effect carries us through this.
Ashok, if this is a short-lived event, Jay Powell may be viewed as completely brilliant because he is pushing investors into high-yield bonds. I'm looking right now, HYG, the biggest high-yield bond ETF, saw another $500 million of inflows yesterday after Jay Powell's announcement. What happens, however, if insolvencies start to spiral, if this goes on for a long time and investors start saying, hey, Fed, What now?
I suspect if defaults and the Fed has some things that, the Fed doesn't take it back, this is going to be, by the time all's said and done, an $8 trillion plus balance sheet. Some losses can, be all washed away in the whole scheme of massive numbers. So I think the Fed, is not going to get too worried about a default and a loss here or there. Now, does the Fed want to make this a big front page news that, the Fed has effectively subsidized and takes losses on a wide range of corporations or certain industries? I think absolutely not. So I think there's going to be a balancing act, but I think the Fed is going to view this, and Jay Powell's pretty transparent about this, it's be very active, be very aggressive, and in some ways, let's deal with the consequences down the road because this contraction is so severe and impacting so many people that, we, the Fed, are supposed to act as aggressively as we can.
Ashok, fantastic to get your thoughts on the programme. I hope you and the family are doing well. Ashok Badia there of Neuberger Berman. Much more still to come on the programme. We'll catch up with Dan Ives of Wedbush on the big tech results that are behind us and in front of us. We'll do that a little bit later this morning. For now, let's get you some headlines, some news worldwide. Here's Michael Barr.
Thank you, John. Lisa, Tom, the federal government's social distancing guidelines are expiring, and President Donald Trump says he's not extending them. President Trump spoke at a roundtable discussion called Opening Up America Again.
This is going away. This is going away. I think we're going to come up with vaccines and all, but this is going away. And when it's gone, we're going to be doing a lot of things.
Trump's advisor and son-in-law Jared Kushner is predicting that the country will be, quote, really rocking again by July. The president is also planning his first long trip in weeks with a visit next week to Arizona. Yet the number of reported coronavirus infections and the number of deaths caused by COVID-19 continue to rise. More than 60,000 deaths in the U.S. have been attributed to the coronavirus. President Trump will hold a virtual town hall on Fox News May 3rd, returning to campaign mode after spending nearly 2 months in the White House. A return for sports would be a return to some semblance of normalcy. In an interview with Washington Nationals first baseman Ryan Zimmerman, Dr. Anthony Fauci says he is hopeful baseball can come back this season.
I hope that there's some form of baseball this summer, even if it's just TV. And I do that I feel that strongly, one, because I'm an avid baseball fan, but also, it's for the country's mental health.
Experts say we may have to brace for a year in which we may not see many of our favorite athletes suit up and take their respective fields, rinks, or tracks. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg. John, Lisa, Tom.
Michael Barr, thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Equity futures down 11 on the S&P 500, negative 0.4%. History making in the oil market. Brent crude and WTI rallying today, but to see Royal Dutch Shell cut its dividend for the first time going back to the Second World War. Tom, I've been close to that company. Used to catch up with them every quarter back in London. Just unreal. That just speaks to the reality of the moment.
To the younger listeners, there is a romance to the name. And to see that, John, was shocking.
Absolutely. A little bit more on that a little bit later. Your equity market charges on ahead of earnings from Apple, Amazon after the closing bell. We have data at 8:30 Eastern Time and a news conference from ECB President Christine Lagarde from New York. This is Bloomberg Radio.
Business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing. Elite
Great advisory firms rely on BNY Mellon's Pershing to meet the needs of their most complex clients. Karen Novak, Chief Operating Officer at Pershing Advisor Solutions, explains how.
At BNY Mellon's Pershing, we bring customized insights and strategies to help you grow your advisory business and stay on the leading edge. We can support the needs of your most sophisticated clients with a full range of investment and wealth management solutions, from access to private banking to consolidated bank and brokerage custody. Learn why so many of the largest advisory firms turn to us for the financial strength and high-touch service that BNY Mellon's Pershing can provide. Are you well positioned to stand out from your competition?
Learn more at Pershing.com or call 800-445-4467. Brokerage custody provided by Pershing LLC and other services provided by Pershing Advisor Solutions LLC. Both members of FINRA and SIPC. Private banking and bank custody provided by BNY Mellon NA. Member FDIC.
Influential conversations.
If you want to do something important, work in adult social care.
I'm Greg and I lead the team at a residential care home. Supporting people to live life to the fullest. It's an amazing job to have.
We are recruiting in your local area. We need you now, and they need you always. Care for others. Make a difference. Today. Search adult social care jobs now.
Dating can be tricky, especially when you can't meet face to face. So it's time to get creative with the easy way to replace physical dates, Video Call from Bumble, the dating app where women make the first move. Here's Anna Williamson and Tom Reed-Wilson with some tips on connecting online.
It's a bit harder to flirt with limited body language, but nothing beats a smile and some eye contact to show them you're interested.
And have an activity plan for your date. This will help break the ice.
Download Bumble today. Where will 2020 take you? Somewhere where people care. About each other. About our planet. About creating a better world for everyone. And becoming the best versions of yourselves. Join a community of like-minded individuals at the University of Winchester. Make sure to accept your offer by the UCAS deadline and visit our website to find out more. See the bigger picture. Be the difference. Go to winchester.ac.uk.
Hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. S&P futures are lower. NASDAQ futures are higher following strong results from Microsoft, Facebook, and Tesla after the close. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures, they're down about 9 points now. Dow futures down 66. NASDAQ futures are up 25. The DAX in Germany's down 1/3%. 10-year Treasury up 7/32, yield 0.60%. The yield on the 2-year 0.18%. NYMEX crude oil is up 17%, up $2.63 at $17.68 a barrel. COMEX gold up 0.8% or $14 at $17.2740 an ounce. The euro 1.0875 against the dollar. The yen 106.58. Kraft Heinz said its 2020 guidance remains uncertain. Meanwhile, Comcast added the most quarterly internet customers in 12 years, providing momentum to a business that's become crucial during the home lockdowns caused by the pandemic. And Twitter's up 9% after first quarter revenue and ad engagement rose. McDonald's profit missed analyst estimates, and it said it sees a dramatic change in consumer behavior. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Tom, John, and Lisa.
Karen, thank you very much. Let's turn to the Oval Office now, where the President of the United States conducted an interview with Reuters. Here's the quote for you from the story overnight. The President said on Wednesday he believes China's handling of the coronavirus is proof that Beijing, quote, will do anything they can to make him lose his re-election bid. He said he was looking at different options, Tom, in terms of consequences for Beijing.
And it will be interesting, John, to see how he drives that forward with the polling shift to Arizona and a presumed event, and I believe a virtual event. Is that right, John? He's going to try to do a virtual event as well?
I have no idea. I think we're going to have several virtual events on all fronts over the next several months.
Maybe you should listen to Small Business America instead of taking it out on Beijing. Right now, our chief Washington correspondent, Kevin Cirilli. Kevin, if I'd interviewed the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom yesterday on his bouncing boy, it would not have been as important as your interview yesterday with Virginia. Virginia Ali, of course, with the late Ben Ali making Ben's Chili Bowl go as a small business like no other in America. Did she get a check yet, Kevin?
She did. She said that her loan was approved from the Small Business Administration, and I think it points to a larger issue in what she represents, which is this fight to get these loans from the government. And you and I, Tom, have talked about this before, right here on this program. That ability to get those loans approved has frustrated people of all different political stripes, from Republicans and Democrats alone. I think what was very fascinating and notable from the president's interview yesterday with Reuters, especially as it relates to China, is his ability, or his attempts and ability to connect what he's saying about China to his first-term efforts pre-pandemic with trade policies. And that was something that he had insinuated even before he was running for president. He always said he was going to be tough on China. What he's doing is laying down a political battle line of sorts for the Biden campaign to say, I'm going to run and say that I'm tough on China. What are you going to do about it?
Kevin, this is actually a really important point, and I wanted to actually dig a little further into the rhetoric we heard from President Trump on China. We're expecting China to be a pretty big issue heading into the November election. How much support does President Trump have from other Republicans and, frankly, even from Democrats in terms of criticizing or even blaming China for their response to the pandemic? Because we're seeing this internationally. We're seeing this also from European politicians who are expressing increasing anger. And despite what you may say about deflecting blame, etc., how much is this tension going to increase the geopolitical tensions going forward?
I think it's dramatically going to increase the geopolitical tensions, Lisa. You know, yesterday I interviewed Congressman Trey Collingsworth. He is a Republican from Indiana. And also yesterday I interviewed Dan Crenshaw, a Republican from Texas. And they were very critical of China. Over the past several weeks, every Democrat and Republican I've interviewed had said China has to do more. China has to be more transparent. I pay attention to Crenshaw because he is a rising star within the ranks of the Republican Party. He is very much in line to former Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice's geopolitical worldview. And he has introduced legislation that would allow for laws to be changed that would essentially look for reparations from China. And Senator Tom Cotton, a Republican from Arkansas, introduced a companion bill in the Senate. Whether or not it gets approved from Speaker Pelosi and the Democrats, I don't know yet. But I can tell you that Senator Mark Warner, the top Democrat on intelligence, has said to me multiple times, that China has to do more. So I don't know what the Biden campaign, which has not yet over several months, even on the debate stages, predating the coronavirus, what their vision is going to be on China or what their policies are going to be on China. But every Democratic staffer, strategist, and aide has said that they're going to have to come out and say something as it relates to China. And you mentioned Europe, and I would just say I think there's a frustration amongst hawks in the Republican Party that Europe hasn't done more in terms of what they have done. But at the State Department, I can tell you that based upon my reporting, there have been several back channels and increasingly public channels to get Europe on board on the same page for U.S.-China policy. And very quickly, I would just say, along those lines, Democrats have suggested, okay, yes, we have to be tougher on China, but at the same time, America and the Trump administration is going to have to maybe not reset their trade relations with Europe, but to get Europe back on the same page with China, maybe has to change its rhetoric with the Europeans so that they're speaking from the same playbook.
Several reports in the last week, Kevin, suggesting that China has been using some of its commercial weight to put pressure on the Europeans to water down a report about China's role in all of this over the last several months. There is talk and then there's policy, and you've touched on the policy. When the president says he's looking at different options in terms of consequences for Beijing, do we know what he means?
Not yet publicly, but privately, the policy tools that are being discussed include everything from trade negotiations that would put pressure on Beijing to shut down wet markets to even other additional more hard-lined tariffs to some extent, or even, dare I say, sanctions. And we don't have reporting on this, but it is something that is openly being discussed in Congress, not necessarily yet within the administration. But in Congress, they're saying would that be something that would be on the table? And this is all about, and I would note this, the frustration between the Europeans and the United States with each other, with China, really is 5G. And 5G has been a tension point, a boiling point from the U.S. perspective for so many European nations that have done business with China for 5G. One of the things that I know we're all looking for is to see if this pandemic changes the longer term 5G dynamics with Europe and Beijing.
Hearing some of the same things in the UK and some of the UK reporting too. Kevin, always great to get your thoughts on the show. A busy morning this morning. Good morning to you all worldwide. In about 1 hour's time, we will have initial jobless claims in America, and an ECB rate decision is just 20 minutes away. From New York, this is Bloomberg.
Message and data rates may apply. T&C and privacy terms can be found at babbel.com/terms. Please don't text and drive.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then try Babbel for free by texting EXPLORE to 64,000. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just text EXPLORE to 64,000 and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or text EXPLORE to 64,000 and try it for free. Text EXPLORE to 64,000.
Hey y'all, Jeff Foxworthy here. Now, if you've ever found yourself repeating the same thing over and over for 75 years, you might be Smokey Bear.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
That's why I'm filling in for Smokey to switch things up, because there's a lot more to say. And I should know because my grandfather was a firefighter. And one of the things he taught me is that the people that love the outdoors the most are often the ones accidentally starting wildfires, which means always BYOB. No, bring your own bucket to the campfire. And be extra careful with things like burning yard trimmings. Don't just walk away, or chances are you might be starting a wildfire. So for the love of the outdoors, go to SmokeyBear.com to learn more about wildfire prevention. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
If you want to do something important, work in adult social care.
I'm Georgia. I love social care because you never know what each day will bring. The thing that I would say to anybody that was thinking about a job in social care is go for it.
We are recruiting in your local area. We need you now, and they need you always. Care for others. Make a difference. Today. Search adult social care jobs now.
The garden tools that mean you can grow your own. The fire pit that turns tea time into an alfresco dining experience. The paddling pool that turns your back garden into a water park. With a choice of ways to pay, you can make the most of family time. You can say yes when it matters most at very.co.uk. Goods and services provided by Shop Direct Home Shopping Limited. Credit provided. Subject to status by Shop Direct Finance Company Limited. 18 plus.
Dating can be tricky, especially when you can't meet face to face. So it's time to get creative with the easy way to replace physical dates, Video Call from Bumble, the dating app where women make the first move. Here's Anna Williamson and Tom Reed-Wilson with some tips on connecting online.
It's a bit harder to flirt with limited body language, but nothing beats a smile and some eye contact to show them you're interested.
And have an activity plan for your date. This will help break the ice.
Download Bumble today.
Live from the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119 and around the globe. The Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Surveillance.
From New York City, this is Bloomberg Surveillance. For our audience worldwide, we're live on Bloomberg Radio, 2 hours away from the opening bell in New York. Equity futures down 12 points at the S&P 500, off by 0.4%, wrapping up the month of April, and what a month it's been for equity markets in America. The S&P 500 on course for its biggest monthly gain going back to 1974. The equity market performance a little softer on the day, really powerful move upwards on the month. In the bond market, Treasuries yields lower by 2 basis points to 0.61%. Initial jobless claims in focus 60 minutes from now. 3.5 million is the median estimate, which over the last 6 weeks would take us to just short of 30 million jobless claims. Some stunning numbers, some ugly data, Tom.
I'm glad you bring that up, John, because in the huge news flow this morning, it has been pushed aside. This weekly data of 3 million here, 4 million here. We don't have a modeled end to this, do we?
I don't think we do. I don't think you can model something we've never seen before. I think that's the difficulty, Tom. And I don't think you can extrapolate this out through the rest of the year either. So you've got the economy where the data is absolutely dreadful, and you've got the equity market which has just been storming ahead through the month of April, largely because it's concentrated around five names which make up 20% of the overall index. And the numbers, Tom, that we've seen from the likes of Microsoft, the likes of Facebook, Microsoft effectively saying that the net impact on total company revenue has been absolutely nothing from COVID-19. And Lisa, Facebook coming out and saying the first 3 weeks of April was absolutely dead flat from a year ago.
Yeah, and we did see some optimism that maybe this recovery that we did see in just these 5 stocks was expanding out. And yet these earnings just highlight how concentrated the power is of the likes of Alphabet and also Facebook. My question is Apple. Apple's going to be a big question mark after the bell today. Tom?
I think we might have lost Tom Keane there. I think we might have lost his microphone. So we're going to re-establish our connection with our co-anchor. I did think he'd gone very, very quiet, Lisa.
I was about to say.
Because usually as soon as you start to say something, you just hear, yeah. And then once I stop hearing that, usually I start thinking there's a problem. He's no longer with us.
Someone killed his mic.
I think someone might have killed his mic. We'll try and reconnect with Tom Keane in just a moment. I want to turn now to Dan Ives, who's done a fantastic job of being a guiding light for some of these big tech firms. Dan Ives of Wedbush Securities joins us on the phone. Dan, fantastic to catch up with you. We've had some really encouraging numbers from Microsoft, some stunning numbers from Facebook. Dare I ask, and it's very subjective of me to ask this, do we run the risk that relative to expectations, Microsoft and Facebook just delivered their best numbers of the year?
Well, I'd almost take it a step further. I think it's probably one of the best performance in the history of the company. When you just think about the pandemic and just at the dark storm, you look at Microsoft on cloud, I'd argue it's a net positive from what we're seeing on the cloud side, and that obviously benefits Microsoft as well as Amazon. You look at Facebook from an engagement and advertising perspective, that's something where much better than feared. And this is going to put fuel in that rally for a narrow group as the strong get stronger.
Dan, I want to shift the focus to Apple, which reports after the bell. This seems to be the big wild card to me because it's unclear how they can diversify their business in the way we saw even Facebook start to do with respect to phone calls and an acquisition of an Indian telecommunication company recently. What's Apple, or what are Apple earnings going to be like in light of the expected complete fall off in demand for the iPhone?
Yeah, and Apple is unique because when we're talking about a lot of their FANG peers, they're actually seeing net tailwinds. When you look at streaming e-commerce and others, when you look at Apple, it's a rip the Band-Aid off movement. I mean, this is one where, units are going to be down relative street 15, 20%. The big question is how bad, what the trough looks like, and any timing on 5G iPhone 12. That's going to be the key that come out of Cook's mouth to understand just how bad the demand situation looks.
Dan, I know you're a bull on Apple. What is the sum of the parts valuation that you have right now? I want it to pennies. What's the sum of the part valuation?
So some of the parts become, if you look from a services, and I'd say services, we could say was a big part on the upside. On the downside, it's a big part of protection. We think that's 500 to 600 billion is the services business. Then you look at the iconic iPhone as well as hardware franchise. That's worth about $1 trillion. So when you kind of put those together, part of why the stock is held in here, it's because that services business gives you 500 to 600 billion of what I view as sort of core protection with iPhone numbers down.
I look at the valuation here of service. Do you look at the service pop, which we're clearly going to see today, as a pandemic one-off, or is it mostly a solid growth rate statistic?
I view it as a solid growth rate statistic, and that becomes the savior for Apple. Because if you look at services, that's something that's going to be north of 50 billion this year, going into next year north of 60. And that's something from an investor perspective, at least you could sink your teeth into, and you know what the numbers are going to be. I mean, just to give you an example, we took iPhone numbers down 17%. We took services down 2%. So it just shows the Teflon-like number there in services.
Dan, I want to take a step back as we get all of these big tech earnings, and they not only meet expectations, but in some cases blow them out of the water, showing their resilience during one of the worst crises in history for the economy. I'm struggling to understand what this means for them going forward, particularly when it comes to consolidation, their acquisitions, at a time when antitrust concerns are falling away and survival is key, with regulators likely to approve things they may not have in the past in the spirit of just preserving jobs.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great point, because to some extent, they've gone from ones that had the bright spotlight in a negative view from a monopolistic competition, and now almost more of a Boy Scout, right? In terms of they're really the core arteries from a consumer and enterprise landscape. I still think from an M&A perspective, they're going to be very careful about M&A. I think the big thing here is, like, when you look at the cash profiles, you're going to see them continue to invest. Look what Facebook's doing going after Zoom, or Google as well. You're going to see them use their massive install base to go after other tangential growth opportunities. But the one thing I'd say, on the other side of this dark valley, these large tech players, FANG plus Microsoft, they get incrementally stronger.
One final question for you, Dan, and it's been the story of the week for the equity market, the outperformance of the equal-weighted S&P 500 versus the cap-weighted. We talked about the dominance of mega-cap over the last month or so, but coming into this week, we've had some real underperformance. Now, I know this is a little bit outside of what you do every day, but just from an investor allocation standpoint, can this concentration in the mega-caps hold up? It hasn't done over the last 3 days. It certainly has done over the last several years. But what's your answer to that particular dilemma at the moment?
I believe that if they didn't deliver in terms of earnings, then I don't think it would have held up. The fact that you've seen the numbers over the last week, that's really validated, put a feather in the cap in terms of this thesis. I do think it's going to be remember in cloud, the large caps, but it's going to flow to more mid caps in the cloud stacks. Remember Microsoft, it's not just about Microsoft. It's about the broader cloud sector. I think software, too, is a safety blanket sector in this market.
Dan, thank you so much. Brilliant. Dan Ives with us with Wedbush. The Bloomberg NJIT STEM report brought to you by New Jersey Institute of Technology. They offer an MBA that provides STEM professionals with a technology-focused experience. Learn more at njit.edu/MBA. Here's Bob Moon.
Tom, Jonathan, Lisa, good morning. Here's what's making news in science, technology, engineering, and math. COVID-19 has killed more than 200,000 people, triggered a severe recession, and left governments struggling to get people back to work. A key part of that effort is contact tracing technology that helps authorities track the virus and warn citizens who may be infected to stay home or get tested. Tech companies have jumped at the opportunity, with the highest profile effort coming from Apple and Google. Compared to the rest of the world, though, the U.S. is behind in developing contact tracing apps. There's been no formal federal coordination from the Trump administration, no official national system, and a patchwork of apps have sprung up at the state and even municipal level. level. In contrast, Singapore was among the first to roll out a contact tracing app. Trace Together launched on March 20th, and more than 1 million of Singapore's 5.7 million residents installed it by mid-April. India's contact tracing app was downloaded by more than 50 million people in just 13 days at the urging of Prime Minister Narendra Modi. The app collects a lot of sensitive information, though, and can use it in more ways, which has prompted criticism from privacy advocates. More than 2 million Australians have downloaded the government contact tracing app, which uses Bluetooth instead of GPS information and crunches data securely on each individual's phone. Still, it's well below the 40% of the population that need to use it for the system to be effective, according to the Australian government's estimates. That's the Bloomberg NJIT STEM report. Tom, Lisa, John.
Bob Moon, thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Here's your news, your headlines worldwide. Here's Michael Barr.
John, Lisa, Tom, thank you very much. The American people want the country open. That's the message from President Trump. The president spoke about the path to reopening the U.S. economy during a White House roundtable attended by senior administration members and business leaders. The president says he wants to see packed stadiums and full restaurants in the near future, although he didn't specify by when.
We want it to be the way it was, because the way it was is the right way. We can't have somebody with a half a restaurant. You understand? He had 175 seats. Now he's got half. That's not going to pay the rent.
When asked what he thinks the new normal will look like, the president said what it was 3 months ago. Delaware Governor Jay Carney says he realizes that people want to get back to some normalcy, but that can't be rushed.
Got the blunt instrument of a stay-at-home order, social distancing broadly across our economy, and as a result, we're really devastating sectors of our economy. And it's working here in Delaware. We're seeing a flattening of the curve, if you will, but people are getting tired of it.
Delaware state health officials confirmed 80 more coronavirus cases and 7 additional deaths yesterday. The Australian Capital Territory has become the first of the country's 8 states and mainland territories to declare itself free of all known cases of the coronavirus. Health officials say the area around Canberra was free of any recorded infection for the first time in 7 weeks after the last patient recovered. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg, John.
Michael Barr, thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Your news, your headlines worldwide there with Michael Barr. Here's your price action this Thursday morning. Equity futures lower by 7, call it 8 points on the S&P 500, down by 0.25%. 2 huge heavyweights reporting after the close, not just Apple, Amazon as well. Those numbers very much in focus. Outside of that, it is all about the economic data. In about 3 minutes, we'll get an ECB decision. 45 minutes after that, a news conference and initial jobless claims in America. Your median estimate, 3.5 million, Tom. Yields ahead of that come in 2 basis points, 0.61%.
The depth of these job cuts, John, to not Jobs Day Friday, but 8 days from now, is going to be profound. I can't say enough, John, about the importance of Rick Adana's note this morning. Carl Rick Adana extending out that timeline to 2022 and 2023.
Talking of extending things out, Lisa, I just don't know if you can extrapolate the performance of the likes of Facebook's and Microsoft over the last month, the last 3 weeks for the rest of the year. Business spending is going to be really tough. Cloud is not going to be an easy ride.
Yeah, you got to have paying customers at the end of the day. I'm just struggling to understand people's confidence about a U-shaped recovery with the sort of back end of it actually coming up in short order at a time when we're seeing so many layoffs. I mean, the ripple effects of this are dramatic.
A topic up for discussion over the next several hours right here on Bloomberg Surveillance. At 8 a.m., we'll be catching up with Danny Blanchflower of Dartmouth College and formerly of the Bank of England. Looking forward to that interview this morning. Good morning to you all. We are down just 6 points on the S&P 500. We recover just a little bit, down 0.2%. From New York, this is Bloomberg Surveillance live on Bloomberg Radio.
With a Bloomberg Business of Sports report, I'm Michael Barr. The head of the IOC's Coordination Commission for the Tokyo Olympics says he disagrees with suggestions by some scientists and doctors that a vaccine for COVID-19 is needed to hold the Games. John Coates, an International Olympic Committee member from Australia, says the advice we're getting from the World Health Organization says we should continue to plan for this date, and that is what we're doing, and that's not contingent on a vaccine. Coates says a vaccine would be nice, but we will just continue to be guided by the WHO and the Japanese health authorities. Boxing chiefs are considering using television studios to host fights behind closed doors because of the coronavirus. According to the Telegraph, fights would involve British boxers only with promoters. British Boxing Board of Control General Secretary Robert Smith hopes the government approves it. The fights could start as early as July. And that is a Bloomberg Business of Sports report. I'm Michael Barr.
25 years ago, NJIT graduate Dick Sweeney co-founded Keurig Green Mountain, a company whose incredible innovations changed the way the world brews a cup of coffee. Today, he lectures widely on business leadership and is a strong advocate for NJIT's work to combine business education with the power of STEM.
NJIT is definitely fostering the innovative thinking for budding entrepreneurs simply because that's the world we live in. NJIT is producing students that have been trained, educated, and given the business acumen to be a contributor to a company. The distinct mission is to develop great STEM scholars. The attributes I've always looked for in team members are heart, smarts, guts, and luck. So we want people with passion, intelligence, courage, and never discount luck. The student coming out of NJIT has experienced all of that.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
Global news 24 hours a day.
I can find and fund my car, from a Mini to a Jaguar.
Feel good car buying from findandfundmycar.com is the place where you can find quality used cars from trusted dealers rated by you, and where you can fund your car with finance to fit your budget. It's feel good car buying, all in one place.
Shouldn't be a carry on, choose findandfundmycar.com.
Introducing the new single, Impossible. From Central American rock and blues trio, Steady Rolling.
It's not impossible.
Their epic story of love and loss continues. Download and stream the single, Impossible, from the band Steady Rolling, wherever good music lives.
Switch on Acorn TV, the brand new streaming service featuring world-class TV from Britain and beyond. Watch exclusive premieres like the colourful crime drama Queens of Mystery.
Once you have eliminated the impossible, whatever remains, however improbable, must be the truth.
And fan favourites like Inspector George Gently.
I'm just an old copper doing his job.
If you love drama with a little mystery thrown in, enjoy 30 days free with code ACORN30. Then just $4.99 a month. No adverts, no contract, cancel anytime. Join online today at acorn.tv.
Today at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. The European Central Bank keeping its benchmark rate at 0%. We'll have all the details straight ahead on Bloomberg Surveillance. Right now, S&P futures are moving lower this morning, while NASDAQ futures are on the rise following some strong results from Microsoft, Facebook, and Tesla after the close yesterday. NASDAQ futures are up about 28 points. S&P futures are down 13. Dow futures down 116. The DAX in Germany is down 0.8%. 10-year Treasury up 7/32, yield 0.60%. The yield on the 2-year 0.18%. NYMEX crude oil up 15.2%, up $2.33 at $17.39 a barrel. COMEX gold up 1.1%, or $18.70 at $17.3220 an ounce. The euro 1.0871 against the dollar. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Tom, John, and Lisa.
Karen, thank you very much. Reporting on the ECB is never easy, so let me cut down on the jargon and the acronyms, and I'll bring you some of the news. Rates unchanged at the European Central Bank. They have several purchase programs. They have the asset purchase program, they have the pandemic emergency purchase program, and they have the corporate sector purchase program, the public sector purchase program. Wrapping it all up, Tom, QE's going to run at about north of 100 billion every single month, well north of 100 billion every single month through to the end of the year. And that QE isn't going to stop throughout next year even until they start thinking about raising interest rates. And then even after they raise interest rates, they'll carry on reinvesting that QE debt for an extended period of time after that. So all you need to know from the ECB this morning, rates unchanged, asset purchase programs unchanged. The new one today is a pandemic program for refinancing operations for banks. So that's the new one that just crosses the terminal today. They are going to be called Paltros, okay? Paltros. They will be issued at 25 basis points below the main rate. I hope some of this made sense to some people out there. The ECB's tough sometimes.
This is like, math in elementary school, Lisa, across America right now. John, does any of this speak to the fiscal conundrum that Christine Lagarde faces?
Well, the fiscal conundrum in Italy it certainly speaks to, because we've talked a lot on this program about bond buying at central banks outdoing supply coming from governments. Italy needs that right now in a big way. It is on the edge of being cut to junk. Standard & Poor's last week actually reaffirmed them at BBB, and the reason they did that, they actually spoke to the backing of the ECB. So the ECB right now is really propping up Italian debt in a massive way.
Let's try this forward, and particularly for our American audience, I really want to fold this into the place we're in right now. Daniel Ketzev with us with BNP Paribas, a wonderful French bank. He's had a foreign exchange strategy in North America. Dan, what will you listen for as we all listen to the Lagarde press conference on fiscal matters? She has to address that Europe is not a great fiscal power, is it?
No, I agree with you. I think there will be a discussion of fiscal issues in the press conference and some jawboning directed at the finance ministers and the heads of government to move in that direction. But at the end of the day, just as Powell yesterday said, a lot of this is outside of their remit, and all they can do is kind of nudge gently in the right direction.
Dan, help our audience here. Just how large is ECB asset purchases right now? They've got all these different programs. Put them together. Just how big is monthly QE at the European Central Bank at the moment?
It's not that different from the Fed story, where you have a range of programs. You have the QE programs, which are more traditional, and in fact larger on the ECB side than what the Fed is doing. But then you also have all this alphabet soup that you kind of referred to of credit easing measures, and there's so many programs because there's so many different things that the Fed and the ECB are trying to fix. But the bottom line is they're trying to make sure that markets are functioning smoothly, that there's no pockets of illiquidity, and that they're kind of getting their transmission into all the right places.
There's another loan program for banks, which I'm sure is going to be a topic for the news conference a little bit later this morning. The canary in most people's coal mines right now is a BTP, the Italian bond. The 10-year right now up 7 basis points off the back of this decision. Is the focus still on whether the ECB will buy junk debt from here on out, not just on the sovereign side, but on the credit side too, Dan?
I think there was also some hope that they might do more to address some of the pressure on the very front end of the market that you've seen in at least for part of April higher Euribor fixings, and some hope they might add financial commercial paper or T-bills to their purchase programs. Instead, what they've done is added these additional TLTROs that you mentioned. So that may be coming up a bit short of what the market was hoping for, and that may be why you see some of the pressure on the euro right after the decision, and also on the BTPs.
Dan, I remember when currencies used to be a debate on which central bank was either tightening fastest or easing fastest. So I'm wondering if it still is a relative game in terms of who's easing most quickly, who's got the most ammunition to do so, who's winning here. Where is the pressure right now, on a weaker dollar or a weaker euro?
Well, I think we're kind of like where we got to in 2009 already. We got here very quickly, where everybody is all in, everybody's at zero, and now they're just making adjustments along the margins to make sure that the transmission's working. So everyone's all in. Rate differentials have come down to about zero. It's about 70 basis points, 3-month rate differential between Europe and the U.S. based on the FX forwards. And that means that the currencies that are going to do well are the ones where you have a current account surplus. Investors have no more reason to keep risk in overseas markets, and you'll see hedging away of overseas FX exposure. So that's bad news for the dollar, basically.
I don't want to get you in trouble with Paris, Dan, but let's try. What's the optimal point for euro right now? What's the most efficacious euro-dollar pricing right now for Christine Lagarde?
Well, we think euro is cheap versus the dollar. We think a long-term equilibrium is in the 130s area. So obviously that's a long way away, and that's not going to happen very quickly. But we think you could get considerably higher from where you are now, and that would be a much more neutral place for FX.
Dan Katzif, great to catch up with you. Joining us from BNP Paribas, euro-dollar right now, 108.83. Certainly nowhere near that level at the moment. Positive by 0.1% on the session. In around about 35 minutes' time, you will hear from the ECB President, Christine Lagarde. And let's be diplomatic about it, Tom. She had a difficult time last time around in that news conference.
Yeah, I'm going to cut her some major slack. I mean, I've kidded Ben Bernanke about this. I remember when Ben Bernanke's voice finally relaxed. It took him, his voice was pitched differently when he started doing the press conferences. Mankiw, when he was at the White House, John, could barely speak. And he didn't start communicating until he started talking like he talks in a Harvard lecture. It takes a couple times to do this.
But to John's point here, there is a difference between someone who is a policy person and someone who's a politician. And I think that right now calls for someone who understands markets and is a policy person, and that's the challenge to Christine Lagarde, John.
We have gone from we are not here to close spreads to we will buy whatever we can and how much of it you want us to buy in no time at all, haven't we? Much more still to come on Bloomberg Surveillance.
€130.
Yeah, I don't think we're anywhere near that €130 anytime soon, but who am I to make a call on the FX market? 108.78 on euro-dollar right now. From New York this morning, good morning to you all. You are listening to Bloomberg Surveillance. We are live on Bloomberg Radio.
Asset map.
I can find and fund my car, from a Mini to a Jaguar.
Feel good car buying from findandfundmycar.com is the place where you can find quality used cars from trusted dealers rated by you, and where you can fund your car with finance to fit your budget. It's feel good car buying all in one place.
Shouldn't be a carry on, choose findandfundmycar.com.
Introducing the new single, Impossible. From Central American rock and blues trio, Steady Rolling.
It's not impossible.
Their epic story of love and loss continues. Download and stream the single, Impossible, from the band Steady Rolling, wherever good music lives.
The garden tools that mean you can grow your own. The fire pit that turns tea time into an alfresco dining experience. The paddling pool that turns your back garden into a water park. With a choice of ways to pay, you can make the most of family time. You can say yes when it matters most at very.co.uk. Goods and services provided by Shop Direct Home Shopping Limited. Credit provided. Subject to status by Shop Direct Finance Company Limited. 18+.
This is a message from the government about the emergency measures to support the economy during the period of disruption caused by the coronavirus. To help you, your business, and your workers affected, you can apply for cash grants, business rate holidays, statutory sick pay relief packages, as well as the Coronavirus Job Retention and Self-Employment Income Support Schemes. For information, go to gov.uk/business-support now.
Dating can be tricky, especially when you can't meet face-to-face. So it's time to get creative with the easy way to replace physical dates, Video Call from Bumble, the dating app where women make the first move. Here's Anna Williamson and Tom Reed-Wilson with some tips on connecting online.
It's a bit harder to flirt with limited body language, but nothing beats a smile and some eye contact to show them you're interested.
And have an activity plan for your date. This will help break the ice.
Download Bumble today. Fraudsters are getting more and more sophisticated, and it's easier than ever for people to make an honest mistake and lose their money. TSB doesn't think anyone should have to pay for being an innocent victim of fraud on their account.
That's why they've created the TSB Fraud Refund Guarantee. To find out more, visit tsb.co.uk. Terms and conditions apply.
Typical Danny. Last night I was chilling with my girls, but ended up spilling my Chardonnay all over my fave lilac nightie when I saw the photo I was tagged in. State of my fake tan. But no worries, just one wash and my clothes will smell perf with Surf. Surf gives you long-lasting fragrance with natural essential oils. Find your fragrance in Surf's laundry range.
The losers in a trade war.
You benefit if you're just further away from China.
So that you can too.
What are the ramifications if she crumbles or doesn't crumble?
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business, Radio.com, and iHeartRadio apps, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening. From the financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg Surveillance Economics.
In this cycle, we've dealt with a lot of shocks.
It's important to understand what the Fed can and cannot do.
Finance.
There's no asymmetry left in markets. It truly is a zero-sum game.
We will get slower growth. I mean, let's not get confused about that.
Investment.
Very few investors want to own any energy to begin with.
There's a great deal of uncertainty. People are trying to hide in safe places.
Bloomberg Surveillance with Tom Keene, Jonathan Farrell, and Lisa Abramowitz on Bloomberg Radio.
Good morning, everyone. John Farrow, Lisa Abramowitz, and Tom Keene. We welcome all of you coast to coast. Bloomberg Surveillance, good morning. Washington, Boston, early good morning, 960, the Bay Area. And on Sirius XM, all of you listening on your digital efforts at home, we thank you, Global Wall Street, for listening to us in this great crisis. And the news flow this morning really underscores where we're going. In 30 minutes, we've got jobless claims. John framed that before. We've got Christine Lagarde, and without question, the most important press conference we've seen since Draghi's of a few years ago. And David Blanchflower will join us here in a moment. John, I just want to go to one statistic to give the timeline, and it's not Royal Dutch Shell cutting their dividend, which you did, and it's a huge deal. France's GDP decline goes back to 1949, which was a time of famine and the need for George Marshall to initiate the Marshall Plan. I mean, the scope and scale here this morning of this contraction is extraordinary.
Unbelievable. France and Spain, both of those countries, Tom, GDP contractions of more than 5%. And I think it's worth pointing out there is a difference between how Europe reports GDP and how the United States reports GDP.
Yes, fair.
The US annualizes the number. So these numbers out of Europe are a whole lot worse than what we saw from the United States yesterday. It is much worse. And this is also Q1. This isn't Q2. Q2 is going to be worse.
And excuse me, and I talked to Alan Greenspan about this. I said, well, Alan, when you changed how we do GDP math here, why couldn't you get Europe to change it like you, so at least be apples and apples? Lisa, you know the bond market is the litmus paper of this economic system. What do you observe in bonds after the Powell press conference and before the Lagarde press conference?
Basically, the bond market is betting that the Fed has their back, period, full stop. I will say HYG, which is the biggest U.S. high-yield bond ETF, saw $500 million flow into it yesterday. Its assets have ballooned. If you take a look at the biggest 7 corporate bond ETFs in the United States, they are at all-time records when it comes to assets under management. A huge part of this has to do with Jay Powell and the expectation that the Federal Reserve will buy and buy and buy.
Lisa, thanks so much. You've got lots to talk about. And, of course, the data was green on the screen. We pulled back a little bit. I'm looking at the 2-year yields. And part of the joy, John and Lisa, is here at the Surveillance home studio in the oak-paneled library where the Bloody Mary poured. I can look at a book, The Wage Curve, Blanchflower Oswald, and I can open the book and see the first sentence. Work on this monograph began in 1987. David Blanchflower joins us now from Dartmouth, where he sold 12 copies of The Wage Curve. David, is this the worst you've seen since 1987? This is stunning economic decline, isn't it?
Well, it certainly is the worst since 1987, but I'm a historian as well, and I can't see anything worse than this ever. I mean, I was looking at the numbers you were talking about this morning. We've got numbers for Europe, we've got numbers for France, but also Spain and Belgium and Austria, and we're looking at, I mean, unprecedented numbers. And just to put what John said in context, France, of course, had a negative quarter the one before that. So basically,
interesting.
Certainly now, even before we get to Q2, I mean, these numbers are completely unprecedented, and they're all going to get a lot worse. So we're going to see another number at 8:30. My guess is 4 million or so UI claims. It's a bit difficult to follow because if you look at a place like Texas, there's been a big increase there. But these are numbers that are, the only way to describe it is a falling knife. This is just collapsing through the floor.
Danny, for 10 years, you said don't raise interest rates. You kept saying don't raise interest rates because this labour market has still got a load of slack. There's still a load of work to do. There's still more and more people that need to come back. They raised interest rates. Chair Yellen flirted with the idea of running things hot. She didn't run things hot. Chair Powell quickly realised after a couple of years on the job that maybe they should be leaving things to run hot because there is more work to do in the labour market. Danny, when we come out of this in 12 months' time, 18 months' time, whenever that is, in 2 years' time, the reluctance to do what they did last time around is going to be absolutely massive. Can you help frame for our audience just how long rates are going to be at these levels because of the lessons that were learned over the last 5-10 years?
Well, what a great question. I mean, obviously on your program many times, I took the view that the Fed was mistaken in its rate rises from 2015 to 2018 and left the economy weaker than it should have been when this shock came along. I think we need to look back at what happened both from 2008 onwards, and it seemed to me that people underestimated the scale of the shock. The fiscal authorities tightened too much, and that put pressure on the central bank. And I think we haven't learned the lesson. I used to quote this quote a lot. Keynes in 1931 talked about the long-dragging conditions of semi-slump, and he said the issue was not so much the crash itself, but what followed. And so I think that's a really great question of yours, John, that the reality is that you have this great shock, and then you need to worry about what's coming. And I think if we look back, the biggest mistake that was made was to assume it was all over. And then you could sort of anchor back. And then if you hear now, the Austerians are all talking about, well, now in 18 months or so, we're going to just go back to where we were. We can raise rates and we can tighten up. And I think the reality is that what we know in these giant shocks is that they're long-lasting.
Lisa, how come John Farrell only has all great questions? What is that about?
Danny and I talk before we do the show.
You coordinate and you bribe him.
Great question.
I agree, and I want to build on it, Danny. And the idea of the slack in the economy and in the jobs market. And you wrote a really good paper about this recently, looking at the preliminary data about the job destruction and the mass of it in the United States and in the United Kingdom in the wake of the coronavirus shutdowns. And you talked about the widening wealth gap, the widening income gap, the disproportionate hit on lower income individuals. Is the Fed effectively widening this wealth gap with its programs?
Well, the issue is who are you going to rescue? I mean, we had an initial piece of data from the BLS for its March release, and we're going to get the release for April coming shortly. If you look, the biggest group that were impacted were the young. So the young had a 3.3 percentage point rise in their unemployment rate. So obviously the issue here is that there's going to be distributional consequences here. And obviously the Fed action we know in 2008 onwards, it rescued people who owned assets. And what we're going to see here is that that's the same thing going to happen. The question is, what happens in terms of the distributional consequences? And of course what we're seeing are distributional consequences of the virus itself. So people poorer people without health insurance, people who are not so well. So that's obviously an issue. And the question always for a central bank is, okay, we're going to have an effect on distribution. We only have limited tools. It's up to the fiscal authorities to do something about it. And obviously the issue is, are they going to do that? And I think the second issue is, as we see around the country, are they going to get food to the people who need it? So I think distributional things are really important. And something else I should flag, is that we're going to look at UI claims, but the big deal going forward is going to be underemployment, which is even if people are in work, they don't have enough hours, and that's sort of a huge hit as well, and we're going to see big hits from that. So it's not just unemployment, it's about underemployment, and the people who are going to be underemployed are the weakest folks that you're right, the Fed will not essentially be getting to, because they can't do everything, but the central government and the Congress have to get to those folks, and they aren't. And so what we've seen is the people who do best in the boom are the people who do worst in the slump. So the least educated, the young, we're going to worry about, and the Fed really has no part to play in that game.
Danny, politicians have done a lot over the last couple of months, and one of the things they've done is enhanced employment benefits in the United States of America. There's a rather controversial question being asked in America now over the last several weeks about the unintended consequences of that decision. Can you walk us through how you're thinking about that particular dilemma at the moment? Enhanced unemployment benefits, which for some people, they may well be doing better off without a job, financially speaking, certainly not psychologically speaking, but financially speaking.
Well, the first thing we know from all the work that I and many other people in behavioral economics have done is that the biggest happiness inducer, if you like, is a job. And so obviously the question now is, well, should you go in and help people who have lost a job through no fault of their own? And so that's the first point, through no fault of their own. And so you put in benefits, and we've traditionally done it on a bipartisan basis, to help people through this shock. The issue, I guess, is, so you've helped these people, and then you say, well, are they just lazy? Are they going to just sit there and not look for all the jobs that are out there? And then you get to the point of going, well, what jobs are there out there? The point in this great recession where we've seen German unemployment rise to having huge numbers coming, this 30 million odd increase in unemployment claims is because there's no demand. Oil prices are falling because people aren't driving. The restaurants are closed because people aren't going to them. So this is to temporarily help the people who, through no fault of their own, have been made unemployed. And so to argue that we shouldn't help those people, we shouldn't deal with the difficult issues that are going on right now, seems, well, heartless is about as good as I could say.
Well said, Danny. Very well said.
David Blanchard, thank you so much. He is with Dartmouth College. Now with our news in New York City, here's Michael Barr.
Tom, Lisa, John, thank you very much. At least 11 states have already lifted some restrictions for residents, with 7 more to follow suit before the end of the week. One of the states hit hard by the virus is taking their first steps early next week. Florida is the latest state to announce plans to gradually reopen. Beginning Monday, restaurants and retail stores will be allowed to reopen, but only at 25% capacity, and they'll have to maintain social distancing. The nation's top infectious disease expert is optimistic about the Gilead drug remdesivir. It has shown significant success in helping patients recover from coronavirus. The drug completed a trial in which recovery times are shortened on average from 15 to 11 days. Dr. Anthony Fauci.
The data shows that remdesivir has a clear-cut, significant positive effect in diminishing the time to recovery.
Dr. Fauci said that remdesivir would be used by itself for treatment and also begin in trials to be paired with other medications to see if an even more effective drug cocktail could be found. In the UK, AstraZeneca is teaming up with Oxford University on a potential coronavirus vaccine. We get more from Bloomberg's Leanne Gerrans in London.
Oxford is already in early clinical tests. It's tried the experimental shot on 320 patients so far. Now AstraZeneca is joining in development to add scale and manufacturing prowess to the effort. So far, it's one of the most advanced vaccine projects, entering the human testing phase last week. It's scheduled to reach late-stage trials by mid-year. In London, I'm Leanne Gerrans, Bloomberg Radio.
Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg, John.
Michael Barr, thank you, sir. Thank you very much. It's the Great Divide, the data in around about 17 minutes' time, which could show another 3.5 million Americans on unemployment claims. And then the earnings and the performance of this market. This market this month, the S&P 500 up by almost 14% in April, on course for its biggest monthly gain going back to 1974. The NASDAQ is basically almost flat now on the year. Just have a think about that. An unbelievable run for big tech with the results to match. Much more still to come right here on Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg Surveillance.
Imagine being denied an apartment because of your religion, or your race, or because you have children, or a disability.
It's so wrong.
Yes, but who has the power to stop this?
You do. Each of us has the power. The law is on your side. It's illegal for landlords to discriminate because of race, color, religion, sex, national origin, disability, or familial status. If you suspect that you have experienced housing discrimination, file a complaint with HUD immediately so we can investigate it. Fair housing is your right.
Use it.
To learn more, visit HUD.gov/fairhousing. That's HUD.gov/fairhousing. Or call 1-800-669-9777. 1-800-669-9777. A public service message from HUD in partnership with the National Fair Housing Alliance.
Why do hedge funds and other alternative managers rely on Pershing for a highly personalized experience? Mark Alderati, a managing director at BNY Mellon's Pershing and head of Prime Services, explains.
In today's fast-paced environment, where the only constants are change and volatility, you need a prime broker who's both steady and agile, focused on supporting your needs so that you can focus on growing your business and producing results. Exceptional client service and advocating for our clients is at the core of what we do. Our award-winning high-touch team is just one of the benefits of working with BNY Mellon. We help alternative investment managers create great experiences for their clients. Whether it's customized financing, securities lending solutions, platform access, or outsourced trading, BNY Mellon's Pershing is a prime broker who's committed to this business and dedicated to meeting your evolving demands.
To learn more about the unique and industry-leading solutions for hedge funds and other alternative managers, visit Pershing.com. Pershing LLC. Member FINRA, NYSE, SIPC.
Influential conversations from Bloomberg.
If you want to do something important, work in adult social care.
I'm Greg and I lead the team at a residential care home. Supporting people to live life to the fullest, it's an amazing job to have.
We are recruiting in your local area. We need you now, and they need you always. Care for others. Make a difference. Today. Search adult social care jobs now.
The pressure washer that means your patio is barbecue ready. The 4K projector that brings the thrill of the cinema to you. The yoga mat that turns your lounge into a studio. With a choice of ways to pay, you can make the most of your leisure time. You can say yes when it matters most at very.co.uk. Goods and services provided by Shop Direct Home Shopping Limited. Credit provided by Shop Direct Finance Company Limited.
Dating can be tricky, especially when you can't meet face to face. So it's time to get creative with the easy way to replace physical dates, Video Call from Bumble, the dating app where women make the first move. Here's Anna Williamson and Tom Reed-Wilson with some tips on connecting online.
It's a bit harder to flirt with limited body language, but nothing beats a smile and some eye contact to show them you're interested.
And have an activity plan for your date. This will help break the ice.
Download Bumble today.
Breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow, and futures are little change to lower this morning. S&P futures falling down 17. NASDAQ futures are now little changed, up about 2 points. They've been jumping around. Dow futures are down 156. The DAX in Germany is down 1.1%. 10-year Treasury up 6/32, yield 0.60%. Yield on the 2-year 0.18%. NYMEX crude oil up more than 16%, up $2.43 at $17.49 a barrel. COMEX gold is up 0.9% or 15 $15 at 17.2840 an ounce. The euro 1.0873 against the dollar, British pound 1.2517, and the yen 106.54. Boeing selling bonds after reporting one of its worst quarters on record as the pandemic upends the global aviation industry. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Tom, John, and Lisa.
Karen, thank you. Thank you very much. Euro dollar flat following that ECB decision. Yeah. We are unchanged at just short of 109, Tom, 12 minutes away from President Lagarde.
But we are changed, and we are changed in an economic contraction, whatever way you do the math, in the attendant labor drop that we've seen. Holger Schmieding is expert on the European economic experiment. He is with Berenberg. Holger, this has got to be the biggest moment for Christine Lagarde ever. How does she change, ameliorate, adapt her press conference to the absolute mandate of speaking to the leadership of Europe about a fiscal strategy forward? How does she accomplish that?
Well, at the press conference, she will probably just use the standard, fairly polite terms, urging finance ministers of the countries to come up with a joint fiscal response, because monetary policy can't carry the entire burden. I would expect her to be a bit more outspoken at the closed door meetings, or more precisely nowadays, the closed video conferences of leaders. So expect clear words from her today, but not words that are too stark.
We've had responses at the national level, Holger. We haven't had the joint response that I think many people would like to see at the Eurozone level. What is it that you're looking for, Holger, from European policymakers?
First of all, you're absolutely right. We have great responses on the national level. We have on the European level a significant response. After all, a 500 billion euros program jointly approved on the 9th of April is quite a lot of money. However, the problem is that the dispute over some details of that, and especially the dispute about a follow-up program, clouds everything and overshadows it. What I'm looking for in the end, we'll likely get something that will look like 1.5 trillion recovery program as probably part of the coming EU 7-year budget. That will be a huge amount of money. We will likely hear more about that in June. After next week, the European Commission will present a proposal for that. We'll have a lot of fighting about it, but in the end, we'll probably get a recovery program of notionally worth probably around 1.5 trillion euros.
Holger, what we learned from Fed Chair Jay Powell yesterday is the power of communication. He was able to jawbone people to go buy more credit, more risk, on the margins at least, by saying basically that the Fed has more capacity to buy and can go deeper into credit and other potential assets. How much power does Christine Lagarde have on the communication side to say something without even having to spend a euro?
Well, the ECB is already saying that it's fully prepared to increase the size of its purchase program and to adjust all of its instruments. However, it is a bit more difficult for the ECB to fully follow the Fed, for instance, into junk bond territory, for instance, into de facto buying corporate bonds directly. The ECB is a bit more prescribed or subscribed under the Maastricht Treaty in what it can do. And in Europe, it's more difficult to change the guidelines for the ECB than in the US, where you just basically have one Congress and one president and finance minister.
Holger, let's get to the jargon just quickly. I imagine you're going to get asked this question by a whole host of clients over the next several days. Pandemic emergency longer-term refinancing operations. What on earth is a paltrow? What do you tell them when they ask you?
Gwyneth.
That is another way for banks to get money from the European Central Bank to refinance themselves at very, very lenient conditions with very, very light collateral requirements.
Short and sweet.
So it's easier money for banks, making it easier for banks to pass on the money as credit to the real economy.
Are there less conditions around what they do with that money with this particular program, Holger?
We'll actually have to see, as the details of that will be announced in a good hour from now.
Polish meeting there of Berenberg joining us on the latest from the ECB. That decision is behind us. That news conference 7 minutes away. There is always so much jargon and so many acronyms around the ECB to get through.
It sounds like the Pentagon when you're fighting the last war. And I don't mean to make light of this, folks. There's huge suffering out there. And I say good morning to Gwyneth Paltrow as we had face masks on.
Because she's listening.
2 weekends ago.
How's it going?
She does this all the time. She and I were doing face masks a couple weekends ago.
You did face masks with Gwyneth Paltrow.
Yeah, he goes to the group conferences.
Lisa, you think he's joking? Have you seen the picture of him?
No,
you've not seen the picture. You've not seen the photo of this.
I actually have. Yes, I have.
The middle child is tight with Gwyneth. But John, seriously here, it's like the Pentagon. They got a bunch of letters and all that. And, we didn't have time with Holger to get there, but we're coming up in 6 minutes on a jobless claim statistic in America. And we're coming up on presumed job losses in Europe, granted a different way, less atomistic than Dr. Blanchflower would say. John, the labor pain here is not going to be addressed by an alphabet soup.
No, not immediately. In fact, what some of these programs can do, though, Tom, is try and limit some of the labour pain. It can't fully alleviate it, but it can limit it by helping companies to carry on financing themselves, carry on operating, and hopefully retain more staff. But I agree with you. 3.5 million is the estimate for 6 minutes' time. That would take us to almost 30 million over the last 6 weeks. Now, many of these people are without a job right now because we have decided that these companies, this economy, should shut down. When we reopen, I think we face a completely different dilemma. We have companies that will want to cut costs. They will have to adjust to a different demand environment. And Lisa, then there is a different set of job cuts down the road that we'll be experiencing as well. So in the near term, you have the shutdown and the economics of the shutdown. Also got to consider the economics of a rough economy even after we reopen.
Yeah, I think the Fed has a very long road. And I think, frankly, Jay Powell's tone yesterday reflected that. Bill Dudley, former New York Fed president, had an incredible column yesterday highlighting the difficulty that the Fed has to expand its bailout programs beyond just corporate backing, right? And how do you get it to the main street? How do you get it to benefit the actual employees? And I think that's going to be a very, very prominent focus going forward.
Equity futures going forward, going into this one, 5 minutes away from that initial jobless claims number. We are down by 16 points on the S&P 500, negative around about 0.5%, up aggressively on the month, just a massive month of gains here in America on the equity market, just down a little bit on the session. In the bond market, your Treasury, a 10-year maturity yields come at a single basis point to 0.61%. The data just around the corner. The ECB news conference just around the corner as well, a euro that is basically unchanged, euro dollar going absolutely nowhere. From New York City this morning, good morning to you all. For our audience worldwide, this is Bloomberg Surveillance, and we're live on Bloomberg Radio.
Message and data rates may apply. T&C and privacy terms can be found at babbel.com/terms. Please don't text and drive.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then try Babbel for free by texting EXPLORE to 64,000. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just text EXPLORE to 64,000 and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or text EXPLORE to 64,000 and try it for free. Text EXPLORE to 64,000.
Vatsal Shah is Senior Project Engineer at Mott MacDonald, a global engineering consultancy with more than 16,000 employees. He earned his PhD at New Jersey Institute of Technology and as an adjunct professor is helping NJIT students explore emerging technologies.
My focus is renewable markets, emerging technologies, the idea of floating cities. What are we doing to develop that? What will happen to the city on the water? Well, you're going to have waves hitting it. You're going to have solar. How are you going to develop plants? How are you going to develop vegetation and farming? That sort of thought process happens at NJIT. We actually plan out what will the city look like. How do we develop that? So in 10 years, we're actually ready to take on those challenges when we have our first development in the water. NJIT also has been doing a lot of work in self-healing materials, so taking the polymers and the new material that we have in our material sciences departments and putting them into things like concrete, things like steel, reinforcing our soil.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
This is a Bloomberg Money.
If you want to do something important, work in adult social care.
I'm Greg and I lead the team at a residential care home. Supporting people to live life to the fullest. It's an amazing job to have.
We are recruiting in your local area. We need you now, and they need you always. Care for others. Make a difference. Today. Search adult social care jobs now.
The garden tools that mean you can grow your own. The fire pit that turns tea time into an alfresco dining experience. The paddling pool that turns your back garden into a water park. With a choice of ways to pay, you can make the most of family time. You can say yes when it matters most at very.co.uk. Goods and services provided by Shop Direct Home Shopping Limited. Credit provided. Subject to status by Shop Direct Finance Company Limited. 18+.
Picture in your mind a stylish Audi with striking LED headlights, sporty alloy wheels, and some of our most advanced features, including a 10-inch digital cockpit and smart assistant systems like lane departure warning. Picture what that Audi looks like. Now think smaller. The Audi A1. It's not a small car, it's a small Audi. Visit audi.co.uk. Audi. Vorsprung durch Technik.
Where will 2020 take you? Somewhere where people care. About each other. About our planet. About creating a better world for everyone. And becoming the best versions of yourselves. Join a community of like-minded individuals at the University of Winchester. Make sure to accept your offer by the UCAS deadline and visit our website to find out more. See the bigger picture. Be the difference. Go to winchester.ac.uk.
Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119 and around the globe. The Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Surveillance.
From New York City, this is Bloomberg Surveillance for our audience worldwide. We're live on Bloomberg Radio with your economic data. Here is Vinny Dad-Judice.
Okay, John, jobless claims last week, almost 4 million.
I think we've lost Vinny Dad-Judice there, lost this connection just a little bit. Guys, I'm going to jump back in. Initial jobless claims comes in at 3.839 million. The median estimate was 3.5. That is an upside surprise, and that takes us through 30 million. Through 30 million in 6 weeks. We've had more than 30 million jobless claims in 6 weeks. Absolutely remarkable. The pain gets worse, Tom.
Within our reading here, let's be clear. Lisa, John, has anybody read when this ends? I have not seen an adult estimate of when this rolls off to even 1 million.
Yeah. This is heartbreaking. I'm looking at these figures and to think about the incredible amount of carnage that we're seeing, more than a decade worth of job gains eradicated. I think also really telling to see how much personal spending dropped. It declined by 7.5% personal income, which decreased far beyond the expectations, and personal income, of course, dropping as well. And that also coming in worse than expectations. Just my question is, how quickly can we recover from this when people have had the rug pulled out from under them overnight, from the best jobs market in decades to the worst jobs market, potentially in history?
You referenced that personal spending number. That's March. That's not even April. That's March, and we're down 7.5%. You can only imagine what April looks like as well. The claims number, look, it's ugly. It's what's expected when you shut down the economy. This is what people have been made to do, stay at home. And for many people, that means losing a job. When we reopen, the real discussion has got to be, when we reopen, how quickly do we normalise? And how quickly do these people get rehired? And I think the stat, and Lisa nailed it, the correct one is that it took 10 years to build what it took 6 weeks to totally destroy. And we need to work out how long it's going to take to rebuild. And I think it's going to take a long, long time, much longer certainly than it did to destroy it.
There can be any number of ways to look at this, but I would look to 945. I mean, we've got these claims numbers, and Madame Lagarde's going to speak here in a moment. And then we have our level of consumer comfort. And I don't mean to make light of it, but John, a huge debate here, which I'm hearing from academics, and including David Folkerts-Landau of Deutsche Bank, was brilliant on this morning. they've got to come back. The demand has to come back, and the politicians want to believe they can manipulate that. No, the consumer decides.
Well, that for me is the big question, the recovery, the path of the recovery, and the path of the recovery going forward. Is it a V? Is it a U? Is it a W? We've talked about the alphabet soup so many times over the last several months, guys. We can head over now to Frankfurt, Germany, and catch up with the ECB President, Christine Lagarde.
To welcome you to our press conference. We will now report on the outcome of today's meeting of the Governing Council, which was also attended by the Commission Executive Vice President, Mr. Valdis Dombrovskis. The euro area is facing an economic contraction of a magnitude and speed that are unprecedented in peacetime. Measures to contain the spread of the coronavirus, COVID-19, have largely halted economic activity in all the countries of the euro area and across the globe. Survey indicators for consumer and business sentiment have plunged, suggesting a sharp contraction in economic growth and a profound deterioration in labour market conditions. Given the high uncertainty surrounding the ultimate extent of the economic fallout, growth scenarios produced by ECB staff suggest that euro area GDP could fall by between 5 and 12% this year, depending crucially on the duration of the containment measures and the success of policies to mitigate the economic consequences for businesses and workers. As the containment measures are gradually lifted, these scenarios foresee a recovery in economic activity, although its speed and scale remain highly uncertain. Inflation has declined as a result of the sharp fall in oil prices and slightly lower HICP inflation, excluding energy and food. The decisive and targeted policy measures that we have taken since early March have provided crucial support to the euro area economy and especially to the sectors most exposed to the crisis. In particular, our measures are supporting liquidity conditions and helping to sustain the flow of credit to households and firms, especially small and medium-sized enterprises, and to maintain favourable financing conditions for all sectors and jurisdictions. We welcome the measures taken by euro area governments and the European institutions to ensure sufficient healthcare resources and to provide support to affected companies, workers and households. At the same time, continued and ambitious efforts are needed, notably through joint and coordinated policy action to guard against downside risks and to underpin the recovery. In line with our mandate, the Governing Council is determined to continue to support households and firms in the face of the current economic disruption and heightened uncertainty in order to safeguard medium-term price stability. Accordingly, the Governing Council decided today to further ease the conditions on our targeted long-term refinancing operations, also known as TLTRO III. Specifically, we decided to reduce the interest rate on TLTRO III operations during the period from June 20 to June 21st to 50 basis points below the average interest rate on the Eurosystem's main refinancing operations prevailing over the same period. Moreover, for counterparties whose eligible net lending reaches the lending performance threshold, the interest rate over the period from June 20 to June 21st will now be 50 basis points below the average deposit facility rate prevailing over the same period. We also decided on a new series of non-targeted pandemic emergency longer-term refinancing operations that we will call PELTROs, to support liquidity conditions in the euro area financial system and contribute to preserving the smooth functioning of money markets by providing an effective liquidity backstop. The PELTROs consist of 7 additional refinancing operations commencing in May 2020 and maturing in a staggered sequence between July and September 2021, in line with the duration of our collateral easing measures. They will be carried out as fixed rate standard procedures with full allotment, with an interest rate that is 25 basis points below the average rate on the main refinancing operation prevailing over the life of each PELTRO. Further details on the amendments made to the terms of TLTRO 3 and on our new PELTROs will be published in dedicated press releases this afternoon at 3:30 Continental European Time. Since the end of March, we have been conducting purchases under our new Pandemic Emergency Purchase Program, PEP, which has an overall envelope of 750 billion euros to ease the overall monetary policy stance and to counter the severe risks to the monetary policy transmission mechanism and the outlook for the euro area posed by the coronavirus pandemic. These purchases will continue to be conducted in a flexible manner over time, across asset classes and among jurisdictions. We will conduct net asset purchases under the PEP until the Governing Council judges that the coronavirus crisis phase is over, but in any case, until the end of this year. Moreover, net purchases under our asset purchase program will continue at a monthly pace of 20 billion, together with the purchases under the additional 120 billion euros temporary envelope until the end of the year.
Christine Lagarde with an exceptionally dry statement. Folks, I've been doing this for years, and I have never heard such careful language, really in almost a bureaucratic tone. Lisa, I know you were listening to Christine Lagarde at an historic moment. I was thunderstruck how she got to the boilerplate so quickly.
I've got to say, I'm sort of without words that she had no emotion, because this is a time for emotion, and Jay Powell actually showed us that. Yesterday's statement was as bleak as a Fed chair's statement could potentially get. He expressed this gratitude to first responders. He expressed this real concern for Main Street America that is seeing job losses at a pace never seen before. Christine Lagarde had zero emotion.
Folks, I really have to say I'm stunned. I mean, Lisa and I have gone from, in the last 48 hours, the Blue Angels and the Air Force team flying over Lisa's house, coming south of Manhattan in honor of these workers. And I thought the gentleman from Dillon Reed was shockingly emotional yesterday. And we get, folks, starkly the opposite from Christine Lagarde in Frankfurt. We've got a wonderful person to give immediate perspective on this. And Lisa, I'll have you really monitor the headlines from Christine Lagarde. Maybe there'll be something out there. Marcus, did you expect this rigid tone from this press conference?
Absolutely. She is absolutely understandably scared of making a mistake that she did her last one, when she actually requoted a line from one of the Bundesbank members, Schneibel, saying that it's not the ECB's job to tighten spreads. And that was said in private governing council, didn't quite translate to the world's press. So she is reading a very stern line, but she's probably read it over to herself about 20 times in the mirror. However, at the same time, she's gone right for European governments. You know, that's her stick here. She's doing serious,
and right at where the fiscal response has been completely lacking. I think if you read between the lines of what's happened here today, this is actually massive for the ECB. They have done the Main Street response that the Fed set the tone on, and it is they're paying banks 100 basis points to borrow money for them. Just think about that. The banks are being told, come here, borrow as much as you want, and we're looking at these peltros, Scrabble words galore, will go way over over 1 trillion euros. It's going to be a massive boom.
Well, I'm struck by the idea that she's sticking to the script because she's scared, and I'm wondering about the leadership of hers right now, given the fact that we need somebody who is bold on all fronts to try things in order to stave off the decimation that we're seeing of the jobs market globally. I'm wondering, is she the opposite of Jay Powell, where she's saying something very dry and bland, but her actions or the actions of the ECB are overwhelming and actually major, whereas Jay Powell came out and was all talk and no action?
Oh, well, I would say that I'm not one to give her much of a break, because I thought she was a terrible appointee, having a politician/lawyer into what needs to be a well-respected economist like Draghi's position. She made one mistake last time. It wasn't really, I don't blame her too much. But since then, I think the response of the ECB has been outstanding. I think she's doing the best she absolutely can. She's growing into this role. We need her experience bringing a consensus more and more. It's dry, but this is Europe. This is not America. This is also a time where they're doing something very technical, and this will be felt in the markets probably in a day or 2 days' time, more than immediately.
If you're just joining us, Bloomberg Surveillance Worldwide, we're with Marcus Ashworth of Bloomberg Opinion, just brilliant on synthesizing the markets into these economics and this news flow of economic contraction. Jane Foley scheduled to be with us here in a moment from Rabobank. I know, Marcus, over there you say scheduled. I still can't say scheduled correctly.
A couple more Bloody Marys.
Marcus, right now, I'm having no celery today. Marcus, I want to talk about something Christine Lagarde said that's really, really important, folks. The history in America is we do short-term and long-term. Over in the Marcus Ashworth world, you do short-term, long-term, and this wacko thing, medium-term. Marcus, when she mentions that, what is medium-term?
Medium-term, I would say, is about 3 years. It's actually used to come from something Margaret Thatcher had, actually. Medium-term, it's about three years, should we say, for rough permanent.
Well, Carl Riccadonna, Lisa, jump in here, Lisa. Carl Riccadonna going out to the medium term, extending out this contraction after near 4 million jobless claims 15 minutes ago. And Riccadonna goes out to 2022, Lisa, and 2023.
Yeah, and the question is, as people expect yields to remain low for the foreseeable future, and then even beyond the foreseeable future, Marcus, which assets stand to benefit the most? And looking at the European landscape and the alphabet soup of programs announced, where are you expecting to see the boon?
Well, you've got to see, practically, we have negative 100 basis points interest rates in the European economy. So think about that, and think about peripheral banks that have now just had an ability. They changed the rules last month as well. Their non-financial book, their financials book, they can borrow so much more at negative 1%. It is fantastic. So I would say, buy the trash, buy the sort of fallen angels, buy the stuff that's done badly, because they just had a massive injection from the European Central Bank, and particularly into the banking system. Hopefully that feeds through. And there's lots of things they can do. The ECB, they've decided not to tinker with the size of the package as far as QE is concerned. They've gone straight to real economy, Main Street stuff, the banking system. Yeah. They are trying to get the banks to push money out.
Marcus, we really look forward to what you write here in the next 2-3 days on all of these moments from the central banks. Mr. Ashworth, writing for Bloomberg Opinion. Marcus Ashworth, thank you so much. Right now joining us, and we're thrilled to get her off the trading desk at Rabobank, except I don't think she's at the trading desk at Rabobank, is Jane Foley. Not only looking at that major litmus paper of the system, our foreign exchange markets, the dollar market, the euro market, and all, but also beautifully synthesizing in what all this central bank talk means for corporations and the economy. Jane Foley joins us from London. Jane, it's just been a cacophony of central bank alphabet soup. Monetarists are working as hard as they can. Do you have any optimism the fiscal authorities will get their act together?
Well, I suppose that there is some optimism insofar as that we have had an awful lot in terms of fiscal measures from various different governments. But is there scope to do more? Yes. Will there be a necessity to do more? Yes. And of course, that's the pessimism, isn't it, really? The economic data that we're just beginning to see is looking atrocious. We saw that in Europe this morning, and that was for Q1 in terms of GDP. So, Q2 is going to be even more appalling, and that is going to keep the pressure on both the fiscal policy makers and the monetary policy makers. But it is good, I think, to see the policy makers moving relatively quickly, at least compared with the global financial crisis.
So, Jane, we were just speaking with Marcus Ashworth. He said that the takeaway message was buy the trash. Do you think that that's going to be the message taken by investors?
Well, I think for investors, already there's been a message out there that these central banks are acting as backstop, that the ECB is a big backstop. We had, of course, the downgrade of Italy by Fitch, and yet some investors were saying, well, look, there's going to be a cap to how far yields can go up, because we know that there is one big investor on the street, and that is the ECB. So that message is more or less out there already, but I think the difference here in today's message is how much support that the ECB wants to give to banks to try and allow banks to support these weaker companies, and hopefully, I think the real message is here, hopefully keep people in jobs.
Jane, look, Madame Lagarde's got one or two or three arms behind her back, and it starts and ends with a fiction of the euro in this crazy fiscal policy. I don't want to get all Jean Monnet on you, but the fact is we've known this for decades and decades and decades. Dan Katzeff was on earlier with a small French bank, and Dan was talking about a 130 euro being fair price. Where is Jane Foley's appropriate, effective euro value right now?
Well, an awful lot lower than that. Certainly I could dig out the odd model that would probably put fair value indeed up at 125 or 130, but I don't think it's going there anywhere near there soon. Clearly the dollar is the currency of choice for many investors in terms of a safe haven, because it's more practical. If you're out in an emerging market country, you need dollars in order to buy commodities, in order to finance your loans, etc., etc. So dollars are going to be favoured, I think, as long as there is an awful lot of uncertainty in emerging markets, and that could be quite some time. The euro, the euro does have the benefit of a very significant current account surplus, and I think that could prevent euro-dollar from going near parity, etc. And I think you've already hit the nail on the head. I think the big question mark over the euro is the politics. It's about the lack of unity when it comes to fiscal matters, and the fact that we all know from experience that every time there is a recession, those cracks tend to appear and they get bigger. And already we've seen signs of disharmony in opinion polls coming through from Italy in terms of sentiment towards the EU. If unemployment queues go up, and it's very likely that they will and stay up, then the politicians could be faced with another issue.
Jane Foley, thank you so much. Really greatly appreciate it. Really, with Rabobank this morning, we're going to have to turn back to the U.S. economy right now, folks. There's just so much news flow. Lisa, this morning, it's extraordinary. Lisa, what do you see in the Lagarde headlines? Is there anything you see? We have to understand, folks, I'm in a really constrained office here, and Lisa's got 1,500 square feet you're working off of there?
I'm in a palace on a hill over here, the northern tip of Manhattan. 100% reflects my reality, Tom Keene. I will say that in all seriousness, the numbers are staggering that she put out there. Christine Lagarde saying that the euro area economy could shrink by 12% this year. She also said that she is prepared to do more, that the governing council is ready to adjust its instruments and increase the size and composition of the emergency purchase program as needed. Buying could be extended also for as long as needed. It's supposed to finish at the end of this year, although now it's got an indefinite ending. Although, as Peter Skolominski said, an economy reporter for Bloomberg News, The question is, what kept policymakers from doing it today as far as expanding out their purchases indefinitely?
Yeah.
But clearly a kitchen sink response and this feeling, all hands on deck, we don't know what's happening, but it's really bad.
Well, it's really bad there, and that barely begins to start with 30 million jobless claims, folks, out of an American working population, which I'm going to single point to make the math easy, at 150. So that's 30 divided by 150. It's too early in the morning for me to do that math, Lisa, but this is not funny, and you wonder if the claims data today and the claims data we get next week before that jobs report indicates a new urgency on that fiscal debate of the first week of May.
I gotta say, I keep saying heartbreaking and brutal. I'm wishing for more ways to express this. Honestly, my heart goes out to everybody who's in such a difficult situation, health-wise, and then also when it comes to income contracting dramatically, personal spending declining the most on record. And this is, again, in March. This is before April's job cuts really took place. And there is the caveat that this is before some of the unemployment benefits kicked in. So potentially there could be a buffer on that level. At the same time, the true jobs carnage that we're seeing did not accelerate until this month. And you've got to wonder, again, how quickly are people going to be able to pull themselves up given where their balance sheets were before this?
The signaling of this, Lisa, this goes into the bond market as well, will be the deflation-inflation call. I would suggest the inflation call has drifted away in the past 10 weeks. I guess it's out there somewhere, but nobody's looking right now. But to Folkers Landau of Deutsche Bank early this morning, all the way through Blanchflower of Dartmouth, this disinflation-deflation dynamic, different across the Atlantic, is to me front and center when you see it with a 2-year yield.
And it's actually a horrendous proposition, this idea that debts are increasing dramatically, both on the corporate, the government, and the personal side. And it's going to get increasingly expensive in real terms if this deflationary tendency continues to pay it back.
Right now, Lisa, thank you so much. I just want to mention that Christine Lagarde, flipping what we saw with Powell yesterday, within the press conference in Frankfurt now, addresses society and the pain that is being seen in Europe. We heard that at the beginning of the Powell press conference, and today Christine Lagarde waits for comments at the end of her statements to address what we're all witnessing. This is an extraordinary moment, I can tell you folks, in all the years of Bloomberg on the economy and Bloomberg surveillance. There's stories from the crisis in 07 and 09 and the collapse of Wall Street and all that, but this has been really something to observe today. We observe it always at Bloomberg through the data. It's simple. We had a follow-through up move in the market that's drifted away. Lisa mentioned the NASDAQ doing so well with those tech stocks, Apple and Amazon, to report tonight. But away from that is the shock of oil at a 20 level or even under that. And, of course, the shock of where short-term interest rates are. Please stay with us. We'll do it again. Another hour of Bloomberg surveillance worldwide. This is Bloomberg Radio.
Asset managers who seize change.
Oh, just there, Dave. Smashing. Great. Really? Night, Steve.
Yeah, see ya.
Built to take the big knocks. Samsung rugged devices. Easy to use, hard to break. Explore the Samsung rugged range.
The garden tools that mean you can grow your own. The fire pit that turns tea time into an alfresco dining experience. The paddling pool that turns your back garden into a water park. With a choice of ways to pay, you can make the most of family time. You can say yes when it matters most at very.co.uk. Goods and services provided by Shop Direct Home Shopping Limited. Credit provided. Subject to status by Shop Direct Finance Company Limited. 18+.
While most of us are looking out for each other at this time, sadly, fraudsters are trying to take advantage of the situation. Here's Chris Ainsley from Santander with advice for keeping your money safe.
Phishing emails are designed to trick you into giving away personal details. Messages might be about travel refunds, delivery tracking, or supermarket vouchers. Remember, never click on links or attachments in emails received out of the blue.
For more advice on keeping your money safe, visit santander.co.uk.
Stay on top of everything happening in the pro wrestling universe with the Body Slamming podcasts on TuneIn. For passionate recaps of the most recent SmackDown to a pro wrestler's perspective on life and culture at large, search sports and scroll down to the world of wrestling to listen.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Hit the court anytime with these great NBA podcasts on TuneIn. The Low Post.
So what struck you about this potential head-to-head matchup? What did we learn now that Zion is involved and LeBron and Zion go at each other for the first time?
You know, I still think both teams have to figure out kind of who are their guys when they get into a fourth quarter. I think you saw that with both of them. There were some kind of odd moments.
The Ringer NBA show.
Who ended up winning the thing. But I did watch for a little bit when it was DeAndre Ayton and Zach LaVine playing against each other. And then as the days went on, Devin Booker was involved. Tell me you've seen the clip of Devin Booker when I can't remember who his opponent was.
Or the Haber Show.
At the end, it's because I worked in the NBA in a front office, and you know, when I was 14 years old, my family moved back from Sudan to America. I went up high school here in New York
Find these and more NBA podcasts right here on TuneIn.
We always talk about the losers in a trade war.
You benefit if you're just further away from China.
So that you can too.
What are the ramifications if she crumbles or doesn't crumble?
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business, Radio.com, and iHeartRadio apps, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening. From the financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg Surveillance Economics.
We are being taken out of our comfort zone by the coronavirus.
Dollar weakness is pretty much a good thing for a lot of the rest of the world.
Finance.
We are going to see a global demand contraction this year, most likely, for oil. The financial health of the business sector has deteriorated somewhat.
Investment.
Obviously, the value in high-vol stocks are going to continue to suffer.
It looks as though the bond market is talking itself into a recession here.
Bloomberg Surveillance with Tom Keene and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
Good morning, everyone. Paul Sweeney and Tom Keene, Bloomberg Surveillance, a most historic day, extraordinary economic data. We knew it was coming, but the shock of seeing this economic contraction, some of the numbers worse than expected, some on target, and a few a little bit better than expected. France, with GDP the worst since 1949. It goes on from there. And, of course, Paul Sweeney, jobless claims taking us out to 30 million with claims noted in the United States of America. Lagarde speaking in Frankfurt, very dry up front, and then some emotion from Christine Lagarde as she addresses the economic contraction in Europe. Bloomberg Surveillance, Coast to Coast, brought to you by Cohn Resnick, Advisory Assurance Tax, get breaking tax, legislative, and business insights for financial firms. Cohn Resnick, ready to help. Visit their coronavirus resource center today, cohnresnick.com/COVID-19. And Paul and I and our entire team thank Cohn Resnick for their support. Paul, to go from the economics here and, you know, the emotion of it, to Twitter up X%, Facebook up Y%, Microsoft, you know, it's been a moonshot since Nadella took over, up big. We've got Apple, Amazon today. Does any of that tech excellence permeate out to the rest of corporate America?
You know, I'm not really sure it does, Tom. I mean, you know, some of the tech companies that you just mentioned, we had some good numbers out of Facebook and Microsoft and you know, Snapchat even. You know, there's some real wins in the sales of some of these tech companies in terms of people are stuck at home, Tom. They're spending more time with digital media and they're, you know, so we're seeing usage just kind of skyrocket here. Advertisers obviously are on the sidelines, Tom, because they're not really spend a lot of money here until the economy opens back up. But it just kind of accelerates the trend towards the digitalization of this economy, Tom. And I think that's some of these tech companies that were winners going into the pandemic appear to be getting even more momentum coming, as we get to the other side.
Yeah, Bloomberg surveillance reports this morning that we're doing digital at home. I'm sleepy in Bed Wars, Paul, and I'm trying to get to Nightmare in Bed Wars, Minecraft Bed Wars, but I just can't do it like others in the household. Right now, on this Techathon, the experience of David Wilson. David?
Well, Tom, you've got Facebook shares up 6.5% in early trading. The social media company said revenue for the first few weeks of April was about the same as a year ago, even as the coronavirus pandemic cut into demand for advertising. Facebook's first quarter profit and revenue beat analyst average estimates in a Bloomberg survey. Twitter, though, is a different story. The shares initially rose in response to their first quarter results. Then they reversed. They're down 6% in early trading. Twitter is the most active stock. It's all about what's happening to advertising. Chief Financial Officer Ned Siegel said the ad business is similar to this month to what it was in the second half of March, when ad revenue fell 27%. So they haven't seen any kind of a recovery, and that's a concern. Then you mentioned Microsoft. It's up 1.5%. These software makers' earnings and sales for the fiscal third quarter beat estimates. Demand for internet-based software and services grew as people shifted to working from home. You've got Tesla up 7%. The electric car maker had an unexpected profit for the first quarter. Revenue beat analyst projections, though the company was hurt by a drop in deliveries. We had numbers out of Qualcomm late yesterday. The shares really little changed at this point. Though fiscal second quarter earnings and sales surpassed estimates. Gilead Sciences is up 1%. CEO Daniel O'Day said the drug maker has produced more than 50,000 courses of the experimental COVID-19 treatment remdesivir. O'Day said the medicine can be shipped as soon as U.S. regulators allow emergency use of the drug. Beyond that, looking at earnings, McDonald's is down 2%. The restaurant chain's profit and revenue for the first quarter were lower than estimates. McDonald's said sales sank in the second half of March and stayed down in April. Comcast, little change. On the one hand, first quarter results showed the company had the most internet customers in 12 years. On the other hand, cable subscribers fell and film and theme park revenue did too. Altria Group's up 2%. The maker of Marlboro cigarettes posted first quarter sales that were well above estimates. Kraft Heinz also up 2%. The food maker's revenue beat projections for the first time in 6 quarters, and profit topped estimates. Kraft benefited from consumer stockpiling in response to the virus. So did Altria. Molson Coors is a different story. The shares are down 6.5%. The brewer said closings of bars, stadiums, and other venues that sell beer will hurt this year's results. eBay's also down, lower by 4%. While the online marketplace's business has surged this month, analysts expressed concern that the growth may not last. Then you have American Airlines down 7.5%. The carrier posted a wider first quarter loss than analysts expected. Revenue trailed estimates by the most in more than a decade. As far as this quarter goes, American expects to go through $70 million of cash a day. Yeah. To end this on an up note, ConocoPhillips up 2.5%. The energy producer will accelerate production cuts in response to lower oil prices. ConocoPhillips is shutting down its shale fields for the rest of the year.
Wow. Bloomberg Stocks editor Dave Wilson. I guess we should have been expecting that, with given where oil is, you got to take that production offline. So I guess it should not be surprising at all.
Paul, before you bring in Mr. Call, I want to interrupt and just simply say the German 2-year has moved clearly off Lagarde's comments. It was negative 0.71, and we're down to negative 0.74. That's tangible, Paul.
Yep, it is, and we're going more negative on the rates here as we speak. Lukawa covers all the markets for Bloomberg News. Tom, we always look to Luke to get some thoughts as to what he's looking at as we think across the equity, fixed income, commodities markets. Lukawa, thanks so much for joining us. What are you looking at this morning? We got another terrible and really sobering jobs number today. We've got the ECB continuing to be accommodative. What are you looking at this morning?
So I've been looking at, I think what everyone's been looking at lately is just the outperformance of essentially the small stuff, the junkier stocks that hasn't necessarily been supported by the action in high yield, and how that's kind of being given up today. So what I mean by that is if you look abroad, high yield indexes, drive back out spreads from that, not necessarily doing that well lately. And yet we've had, coming into today, 6 straight sessions of the Russell 2000 up at least 1%. That was the first and only time that's happened since January 2000. And this kind of strikes me as odd, but it also strikes me as kind of indicative of a broader narrative that's been going on. We've had S&P 500 total volatility off the top, realized volatility coming nicely. We're no longer having those 5, 6, 7, 8% moves. But what's continued through this is the volatility of factors. If you look at the realized volatility in either momentum long-short factors or growth versus value factors, those are continuing to skyrocket. So it shows you kind of we're still in this thematic hot potato mode where basically certain themes get traded on and off in a very, very swift manner. It's 1 week it's tech up 10%, the next week it's small caps up 10%, and there's kind of underneath the surface, it's like the duck thing, doesn't look like it's doing much on water, but underneath the leg's moving pretty furiously.
Luke, how do you interpret something that all of our listeners either know or see or just feel, which is the stock market's got a vector that's pretty good, not bad, surprising, great, and the earnings vector is a plunging rock off a cliff? I mean, are those two lines supposed to come together? I believe I learned that in school.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, and I think our friend over at another network, Mike Santoli, had a good way of kind of framing where we are in
Mike Santoli? Mike Santoli's on the Death Star now. Continue.
So he basically pointed out, yesterday on the S&P 500, we got above levels that essentially, if you look at all the other times we had been above those levels, it was when we were pricing in 10% earnings growth for this year. So, the question is, I think, to this point, is the extent to which you can look through how long that earnings growth will kind of rise to meet you, kind of looking through this dark period, or how much you can justify it based on the fact that central banks, as kind of Jerome Powell said, are at zero for the medium term. And that's the kind of the trade-off people will be trying to reconcile right now. It's not clear to me which way it falls, but it's clear that some of the price action recently. Take a look at Rick. What happened to Rick yesterday? And I know you would never be in one of those establishment Toms, but it seems to be pricing in a much faster return to an odd type of normal.
Got that right. Paul, what's great about this, I'm glad you mentioned the great Mike Santoli. Mike Santoli's always identified Paul Sweeney with Barron's, and you read it on a Saturday because you're investing. Remember when things were calm and you read Barron's, to find the next stock? You read Santoli to figure out. Those days are long gone, aren't they, Paul?
It appears to be. We are living kind of day to day here. So, Luke, just real quickly, what is your takeaway from kind of this earnings season that we're kind of, I guess, about halfway through right now? It seems like the market's kind of doing a pretty decent job of looking through it.
Very much so, and, I think it'll be very interesting to watch the kind of juxtaposition of the FANG divergence. But coming into this earnings season, everyone knew the outlook for Facebook and Google was tumbling due to this, and the outlook for Netflix and Amazon was really, really picking up because of this. And the stock reaction suggests, all of the damage has been baked in, but all of the upside has also been baked in. So it'll be interesting to kind of see the extent to which Amazon can confirm or deny that narrative and give a clean sweep on that front.
Luke, 10 seconds. Henrik Lundqvist to the Toronto Maple Leafs. Does that make sense?
I believe the Leafs gave up on taking old underperforming players in around 2004, 2005.
Very good, thank you.
Moving away from that.
Lukawa, thank you so much. A little hockey talk there to get to the gentleman of Bloomberg Business of Sports with the news in New York City. Here's Michael Barr.
Tom, Paul, thank you very much. New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy will meet with President Donald Trump at the White House this morning to press for billions of dollars in budget aid. Murphy on Fox says, I wouldn't call it a bailout. This is a war. We are at the front lines. Murphy says he will thank the president for aid to states so far, but stress that the need for more to keep teachers, police, and firefighters and others needs to be employed. Meanwhile, the Trump administration's public health experts are trying to temper expectations that an effective coronavirus vaccine could be available in months. Bloomberg's Martin DeCarroll reports.
There's no precedent for developing a vaccine as quickly as President Trump would like in his new effort, first reported by Bloomberg News, dubbed Operation Warp Speed by January. Trump hasn't been shy about speculating on potential COVID treatments and cures, but he hedged a bit when asked about a vaccine.
A lot of progress is being made on a vaccine, but you never know, right? You never know. With SARS, they didn't come up with a vaccine, and sometimes they don't, and sometimes they do.
His top medical advisors have said a coronavirus vaccine won't be ready for 12 to 18 months at best. In Washington, Martin DeCaro, Bloomberg Radio.
Police say someone has opened fire using an assault rifle outside the Cuban embassy in the nation's capital and has been arrested. Authorities say the gunman's motive remains unclear. No one was hurt. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. Powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg Tom.
Michael Barr, thanks so much. Greatly appreciate that. Again, just horrific news flow today. There's no other way to put it, with difficult economic data. Markets reverse. We had green on the screen here for a while. Forget about that. Old news. Futures negative 33. Dow futures at negative 316. The VIX moves out 2.45. Big figures, 33.68. And again, I look at the 2-year yield. It's lower. This is Bloomberg.
Why is delivering the best client experience a top priority at BNY Mellon's Pershing? Michelle Feinstein, Director of Client Engagement, explains.
Today's investors want a financial relationship that's on demand, customized, and leverages the latest digital technology. At BNY Mellon's Pershing, helping advisory firms and broker-dealers create great experiences for their clients is our priority. Through our integrated wealth experience, we give you a high-touch service, flexible technology choices, and expert insights, so you can deliver a highly personalized experience to your clients at every step, from onboarding to wealth planning, to performance analysis and more. And because we're part of BNY Mellon, you'll benefit from more than 230 years of strength and stability. At Pershing, we're personally invested in your success.
Visit Pershing.com to learn more about Pershing's integrated wealth experience. Pershing LLC and Pershing Advisor Solutions LLC are both members of FINRA and SIPC.
Message and data rates may apply. T&C and privacy terms can be found at bevel.com/terms. Please don't text and drive.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then try Babbel for free by texting EXPLORE to 64,000. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just text EXPLORE to 64,000 and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or text EXPLORE to 64,000 and try it for free. Text EXPLORE to 64,000.
Influential conversations.
Dating can be tricky, especially when you can't meet face to face. So it's time to get creative with the easy way to replace physical dates, Video Call from Bumble, the dating app where women make the first move. Here's Anna Williamson and Tom Reed-Wilson with some tips on connecting online.
It's a bit harder to flirt with limited body language, but nothing beats a smile and some eye contact to show them you're interested.
And have an activity plan for your date. This will help break the ice.
Download Bumble today.
Picture in your mind a stylish Audi with striking LED headlights, sporty alloy wheels, and some of our most advanced features, including a 10-inch digital cockpit and smart assistant systems like lane departure warning. Picture what that Audi looks like. Now think smaller. The Audi A1. It's not a small car, it's a small Audi. Visit audi.co.uk. Audi. Vorsprung durch Technik.
While most of us are looking out for each other at this time, sadly, fraudsters are trying to take advantage of the situation. Here's Chris Ainsley from Santander with advice for keeping your money safe.
Please be wary of people you've met online who claim to be stranded abroad and urgently need money. Always take time to think before you act, and if you think you're the victim of fraud, then let your bank know. right away.
For more advice on keeping your money safe, visit santander.co.uk.
Typical Danny. Last night I was chilling with my girls, but ended up spilling my Chardonnay all over my fave lilac nightie when I saw the photo I was tagged in. State of my fake tan. But no worries, just one wash and my clothes will smell perf with Surf. Surf gives you long-lasting fragrance with natural essential oils. Find your fragrance in Surf's laundry range.
24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow, and U.S. stock index futures are moving lower, and European shares are slumping after a three-day surge as investors weigh corporate results, more dismal economic data, and the latest virus news. Oil continues to rebound after an early week tumble. Contracts in the S&P 500 extended losses as the latest U.S. unemployment figures showed a larger-than-expected jump in new benefit claims. And European Central Bank President Christine Lagarde said the euro area economy could shrink 12% this year. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. Right now, the S&P 500 is down about 31 points. Dow futures are down 293, and NASDAQ futures are down 31. And again, those were S&P futures down 30. The DAX in Germany is down 1.25%. The 10-year Treasury up 8/30 seconds, yield 0.60%. Yield on the 2-year 0.18%. NYMEX crude oil up 12.1%, up $1.81 to $16.87 a barrel. And COMEX gold little change at $17.1290 an ounce. The euro 1.0842 against the dollar. The yen is at 106.67. And this headline crossing the Bloomberg with the head of the FDA saying that it's moving at lightning speed on the Gilead virus drug. And that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Tom and Paul.
Paul Sweeney, very quickly here before we get to this important conversation with Johns Hopkins University. Lightning speed, and of course I had on my script this morning for TV, Paul, what we learned yesterday from Bloomberg reporting on Operation Warp Speed, which was a somewhat, not secret, but, quiet effort by the White House. So we're doing different kinds of speed this morning, Paul.
Yeah, but it's all trying to get the fact that we need treatments, certainly for the virus, and ultimately we're all looking for that vaccine that will really ultimately open up the economy.
And to learn from the treatments as well is the big effort here. Not that there will be a silver bullet. We have talked to all sorts of good people. We thank Stephen Riley of Imperial College for joining Bloomberg Surveillance today out of London. Right now, my conversation that I had with Francine Lacroix, with Jason Farley, with the Johns Hopkins University School of Nursing. Let's listen.
We've got great data about the way we position patients that will actually help improve oxygen saturations or the amount of oxygen in the blood. It can actually slow down if a patient's progressing toward the need for ventilation by placing them on their stomach. We call that prone position or proning the patient. We can do that before a patient gets ventilated. We can do that after a patient gets ventilated. It actually helps to, by gravity, improve the amount of oxygen in a patient's blood. So that's one thing. The second thing, and I think more importantly what Dr. Fauci is referring to in this proof of concept, is do we have any drug that shows it can help improve the way it responds or it causes the virus to respond in the body? And that, I think, is more what Dr. Fauci is speaking to in his comments yesterday, the proof of concept that we now have a single drug that may offer a benefit.
What is our proof of concept right now with our testing? It seems to be complex. People talk about the swabs and the rest of it. Is our testing up to proof of concept level?
Well, certainly when we talk about proof of concept, it simply means that we have, we've theorized an issue, and when we understand that there is at least something that gives us an idea that the hypothesis we originally proposed is actually has merit, right? And that's the proof of concept. So right now, our proof of concept is that we can stand up across the United States without the help of the federal government, testing, and we can stand that testing up. It's a slow process. There are supply chain issues, but we are now testing across the United States, hundreds of thousands of people a day. That being said, it remains a very slow process. So we do need to scale up, and the administration's estimate of testing 2% of the general population per day, we've heard estimates that would take us approximately 4 years to get to the right level of testing that we need. So we definitely know that we need to speed up our testing capacity, need to speed up the number of people being tested.
Dr. Farley, what are you most hopeful about right now? I know that there are a couple of clinical trials actually showing that remdesivir could be working. How long until we have, an almost certain answer on what drugs can help us fight this pandemic?
Certainly. So I understand, that the data that came out from the NIH yesterday was an interim analysis. And basically what that means is that there's a data safety and monitoring board that's independent to the investigative team. They look at the data, and they've done that. And in that interim analysis, there is a statistical benefit in terms of recovery time. It's a 4-day benefit, so patients who received the drug remdesivir received an 11-day overall time to resolution, whereas people who received placebo was a 15-day time to resolution. Now, that's our first, as we were saying before, proof of concept that the drug may have some level of benefit. When it comes to survival, there was a trend toward survivability that was not exactly statistical significant at this point, meaning that, the metric we look at as scientists to say, is this different, one drug A versus drug B? And the answer to that is right now, it appears that it's moving in that direction, but it was not yet statistically different. But what the data did show was that 8% mortality in the remdesivir arm versus 11.6% mortality in the placebo arm. So that is at least some benefit that we can see mathematically emerging.
Jason Farley, School of Nursing, Johns Hopkins University, and we should mention also affiliated with the Bloomberg School of Public Health at JHU. And, of course, we should mention Michael Bloomberg, founder of Bloomberg LP, and this radio and television operation as well. He has given generously to his School of Engineering and the rest of the Johns Hopkins University. Paul, let's engineer our way to Apple and Amazon. What will you look for?
Boy, it's interesting. For Apple, I think it's going to be interesting is kind of the timing of the rollout of some of their newer products, Tom. Is this pandemic and the supply chain disruption going to delay, and to what extent delay some of their newer products, particularly their 5G phone, Tom? I think that's something that was really counted on by Apple investors to be the next big wave of product upgrade.
I need a 5G phone.
Oh, you need a 5G phone,
That bill
Tom.
needs a 5G phone?
Absolutely. You need to download your latest movies and TV series because you're locked at home, you're quarantined. You want to download those things in 2 or 3 seconds. So that's what 5G can do for you here. So that's kind of the issue for Apple. And Amazon is just, it's crazy how how this whole pandemic is kind of catered to kind of what they do, which is deliver stuff to people's doors. Number one, that's obviously a big part of their business. And number two, the cloud. Yeah. They're the leader in cloud computing. As more and more people spend more and more time at home in computing at home, the cloud becomes a bigger part of everybody's daily life.
We're going to talk about this in the next half hour. I mean, what I noticed yesterday, folks, the Amazon guy came in with a little cart, stacked up to the ceiling with boxes, and they were all little itty-bitty boxes. Everybody ordering one thing at a time. Futures at negative 28, Dow futures negative 247. We need to get the markets open. Stay with us. This is Bloomberg Radio.
Out here in the fields. Hey y'all, Jeff Foxworthy here. Now, if you've ever found yourself repeating the same thing over and over for 75 years, you might be Smokey Bear.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
That's why I'm filling in for Smokey to switch things up, because there's a lot more to say. And I should know because my grandfather was a firefighter. And one of the things he taught me is that the people that love the outdoors the most are often the ones accidentally starting wildfires, which means always BYOB. No, bring your own bucket to the campfire. And be extra careful with things like burning yard trimmings. Don't just walk away, or chances are you might be starting a wildfire. So for the love of the outdoors, go to SmokeyBear.com to learn more about wildfire prevention. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
25 years ago, NJIT graduate Dick Sweeney co-founded Keurig Green Mountain, a company whose incredible innovations changed the way the world brews a cup of coffee. Today, he lectures widely on business leadership and is a strong advocate for NJIT's work to combine business education with the power of STEM.
NJIT is definitely fostering the innovative thinking for budding entrepreneurs simply because that's the world we live in. NJIT is producing students that have been trained, educated, and given the business acumen to be a contributor to a company. The distinct mission is to develop great STEM scholars. The attributes I've always looked for in team members are heart, smarts, guts, and luck. So we want people with passion, intelligence, courage, and never discount luck. The student coming out of NJIT has experienced all of that.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
This is Dating can be tricky, especially when you can't meet face to face. So it's time to get creative with the easy way to replace physical dates, video call from Bumble, the dating app where women make the first move. Here's Anna Williamson and Tom Reed-Wilson with some tips on connecting online.
It's a bit harder to flirt with limited body language, but nothing beats a smile and some eye contact to show them you're interested.
And have an activity plan for your date. This will help break the ice.
Download Bumble today.
Fraudsters are getting more and more sophisticated, and it's easier than ever for people to make an honest mistake and lose their money. TSB doesn't think anyone should have to pay for being an innocent victim of fraud on their account. That's why they've created the TSB Fraud Refund Guarantee. To find out more, visit tsb.co.uk. Terms and conditions apply.
This is an important message from the government. For now, we must all still stay at home. It can be hard, but it's making a difference. So please keep going for the ones you love. Keep going for every key worker on the front line as they keep going for us. Keep going because together we will beat the virus. To all of you making sacrifices every day, thank you. Stay home, protect the NHS, save lives.
Live from the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119 and around the globe. The Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Surveillance.
And good morning. I'm Karen Moscow along with Tom Keene and Paul Sweeney. And the S&P 500 is lower at the open, down about 0.7% or 21 points at 2917. The Dow Jones Industrial Average down 1.1% or 265 points at 24,368. And the Nasdaq's down 0.1% or 10 points at 8905. 10-year Treasury up 9/32, yield 0.59%. Yield on the 2-year 0.18%. NYMEX crude oil is up about 14%, up $2.10 at $17.15 a barrel. COMEX gold little change at $17.1350 an ounce. The euro 1.0849 against the dollar. The yen is at 106.67. Tom and Paul.
And thanks so much. We were talking earlier, Paul, Lisa Bramlett. She's got like 1,500 square feet in her studio that she broadcasts out over, on the other side of New York. And I'm dealing here in a closet. But even from my closet, I can look out upon my house at the 47 Apple products that the Keene household has. I mean, that's what this is about, is complete penetration, isn't it?
Absolutely. Apple's taken over our lives, and they're becoming more and more integral as we are staying at home and consuming more and more media on our devices. Chris Sankar covers Apple for Cowen & Company. He's a senior research analyst, Tom, and he joins us here. Chris, thanks so much for joining us. What do you expect from Apple after the close tonight when they report their earnings?
Yeah, hi. Thanks for having me. And, as everyone is aware, Apple was probably the first one to pull the guidance because of COVID back in mid-February. So I would say that consensus numbers are all over the map. But if you look at the midpoint of it, roughly around low to mid 50 billion in revenues, I do expect them to come in line with that number. And keep in mind that used to be 65 billion, pre-guidance withdrawal. So you're seeing quite a bit of de-risking over there. So I do expect them largely to come in line. At this point, I do not expect them to give a June quarter guidance. And the rationale for that is pretty simple, right? So in Jan 30th, during the last earnings call, they gave a March guidance. 2 weeks later, they pulled it at the time because the supply chain was disrupted due to the COVID. And now the supply chain is up and running, but you have to forecast demand for June based on some geographies that haven't even opened up yet. So I think the demand forecasting is much more challenging than the supply ramifications at this point. So I would say, given all of that, I do not expect them to give a June quarter guidance, but our forecast is to be largely flattish on a sequential basis.
All right, so Chris, so I know they had some new phones scheduled to be launched, kind of a lower or mid-price phone, as well as perhaps a 5G phone in the fall. Where do you think some of those new product launches are going to be impacted? Are we going to see some significant delays in some of their new product launches?
So in terms of the mid-range, I should say the low-cost phone, they did come out with it 2 weeks ago, the iPhone SE, which the price point was anywhere from $399 at the low end to $549 in the upper end. So I think they did come out of the iPhone SE. In a normal environment, you would have seen a little bit more fanfare with the official launch. This time around, it was an online launch. So I think that does add to some upside into the unit forecast in June, but more realistically into the second half of the year. And then the 5G phone, which is scheduled for later this year, typically Apple comes out with a new iPhone in the September-October timeframe. Looks like it might be shifted by maybe a month. But I would say, in the grand scheme of things, whether the new iPhone 5G gets delayed by a month or 2 months, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter to the thesis. It doesn't matter to the supply chain if it's like a couple of months push out. I would say that if it's a 6 or 9 month push out, then there's probably some ramifications in the medium term. But I would say a few months push out really doesn't change the landscape of the 5G adoption into calendar 21.
I can predict for you that all my kids' iPhones will break 1 week before the rollout of 5, 6, or 7. I got one question here. With all of this upside down demand supply dynamics, what do you model out for the growth of their free cash flow and for the sustainability of $207 gajillion of cash? I mean, does the balance sheet get adjusted here off of cash flow or not?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. And, one of the things I would say is that, the stability of the balance sheet has been a major selling point for many Apple shareholders. And, the free cash flow, if you look at it, last year it was around like 22%. If things are going to be down quite a bit this year, we actually don't expect the free cash flow to diminish dramatically. In other words, right now our forecast is just under 20% free cash flow margins for fiscal 20 versus 23% in fiscal 19. So I think that's kind of like the beauty of the model. The other thing that we have assumed in our model is that there is really no buybacks in the June quarter. Clearly Apple has been funding buybacks in their own cash flow, so they could do what they want with it. But given the environment and the optics of it, we just assume that they're not going to be doing any buyback, at least in the June quarter.
I mean, it's just you, me, and Paul listening, talking here. Nobody else is listening. What are they going to do with all that money? I mean, if there's a valuation contraction out there, isn't this like the best time ever for Mr. Cook to get acquisitive?
It's a very valid point, and usually, there are a lot of bargain basement deals at this time, but I think at the same time, how many of them are willing to sell? Historically, they've done more tuck-in M&A, not any big transformational M&A. I feel like that is still their sentiment around M&As at this point. And if it's a big opportunity out there, is there a willing seller as well? I doubt it in these valuation metrics. But at the same time, what they have made it very clear, both Mr. Cook and Mr. Luca, the CFO, have made it clear that they want to be net cash neutral, i.e. they still have net cash of $100+ billion. And what you've seen them do is, effectively do an $18 to $20 billion on a quarterly basis buybacks. And they're also looking at investing in, TV Plus for the new shows, etc. Over the last 5 years, some of the big capex, investments were on retail stores. They're largely done building that out. So what you're seeing is some of the more incremental spend going towards original content for TV plus, etc. And to your point, Tom, when you have $200 billion in the bank, the world is your oyster. But historically, as you're seeing, Apple has not been a major transformational acquisition kind of a company, but it's been more bolt-on.
Yeah.
So, Krish, one of the stories about Apple over the last several years has been the growth of the services business. And I'm just wondering how the services business will fare in a world where 30 million Americans just lost their jobs in the last 5 weeks. We have a global pandemic. How are you thinking about kind of the services businesses for Apple?
Yeah, I mean, it's a valid question. And at the end of the day, I would say the services is definitely more resilient. If in a normal environment, March quarter usually sees an uptick in services, especially from China, where they do a lot of App Store downloads of games around the Chinese New Year. Arguably, this March quarter was not like any other March quarter in history. So there's a lot more people working from home. So I think that actually probably helps the services business overall compared to historical March quarters. At the same time, I think the unemployment is the bigger concern from investors. I think that is more centered around the hardware or the smartphone division where it's much more consumer-centric. Yeah. But I think the services side is pretty resilient in today's environment.
Pretty resilient. Yeah, Paul, let me do some CFA Institute research for you right now. Create, explore, and survive. All this for $6.99. Explore infinite worlds and build everything from the simplest of homes to the grandest of castles. Paul, you can do this with Minecraft. Trust me, Tim Cook's killing it with a Minecraft app from Apple. I know.
Exactly, Tom, because I'm sure that's downloaded all across the Keene household.
Vet Bill won't even go for a walk anymore. He's playing Bed Wars.
Exactly. So, Chris, just taking a look, you mentioned the supply chain here. It looks like China's reopening again. Give us a state of the supply chain for Apple.
The supply chain is definitely in much better shape compared to a month ago. I think, if you look at one of the major suppliers, which is Foxconn, at the peak of the pandemic in Asia, their utilization rates, went below 50%. Right now, they're back up to like over 90%. So clearly, the supply chain has come from a sub 50% in late February to a more normalized run rate today. So the supply chain has seen a quick rebound. You're also seeing a lot of the shelter in place, or as some of the Asian economies call it, like movement control orders, they've been lifted. Or in some cases, they're actually given special permission to some of the larger employers, which would be like many semiconductor companies, Apple, etc., which employ tons of people in the local jurisdiction. Many of them are relaxed. So I think the supply chain is definitely in a much better situation than it was maybe like a month and a half ago. Where you're not seeing the biggest efficiency improvement is because there are some factories or shop floors where you still have to practice social distancing. So you can't have as many people, or i.e. the people density is lower than what it would normally be. So that does have some impact on the supply. But largely, I would say the supply chain is, in today's environment, for a lack of a better word, back to normal.
Hey, Chris, thanks so much for joining us. We really appreciate your thoughts and commentary on Apple. We have got numbers coming out after the close tonight. Krish Sankar, Cowen & Company Senior Research Analyst with thoughts on Apple Computer. Right now, let's get world and national headlines with Michael Barr. Michael.
Thank you very much, Tom. Thank you, Paul. New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy will meet with President Donald Trump at the White House this morning to press for billions of dollars in budget aid because of the coronavirus. Murphy has said he has spoken to Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin to try to loosen spending rules for the $150 billion dedicated to cities and states. New Jersey has the second highest number of coronavirus cases after New York. New information has emerged in recent days about a sexual assault allegation against the presumptive Democratic presidential nominee Joe Biden made by Tara Reade, a former staff assistant in Biden's Senate office. For the first time, someone has gone on the record, a former neighbor, to say that Reade detailed the allegation to her decades ago in the same way Reade is describing it now. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi was asked if Biden should respond to the allegations.
Well, I have great sympathy for any women who bring forth an allegation. I'm a big, strong supporter of the Me Too movement. I think it's been made a great contribution to our country, and I do support Joe Biden. I'm satisfied with how he has responded. I know him. I was proud to endorse him on Monday. Very proud to endorse him. And so I'm satisfied with that.
Reid says the alleged assault happened in 1993. Baseball's Hall of Fame has announced that it has canceled the July 26th induction ceremony because of the coronavirus pandemic. Instead, the class that includes Derek Jeter will be included with any additional new choices at next year's induction festivities. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg. Tom, Paul?
No, Michael Barr, thanks so much. Dow negative 320, 24,314. SPX negative 30, 2909, 2910 on the Standard & Poor's 500. The VIX backs up almost 3 points, 34.02. We haven't talked about Amazon much, Paul, but Apple sort of gets the visibility in our houses. But there's that whole cloud thing. Microsoft displayed a solid cloud business, right?
They certainly did, Tom. And, Microsoft is a very close number 2 in the cloud business in terms of market share. Amazon, number 1. But it's a part of the tech stack, Tom, as they like to say, that is growing very quickly. And
come on, it's a massive jargon alert. What did you just say?
Exactly right. Exactly. I'm, telling my Anand Srinivasan from Bloomberg Intelligence. So the cloud is a big part of the story there at Amazon. I'm sure they're going to play it up today because it's actually profitable for Amazon.
A tech stack?
A tech stack.
A tech stack.
I've been reading a lot of Bloomberg Intelligence technology research.
It's very impressive. Folks, coming up, more of our radio stack. Paul Sweeney and Lisa Abramowitz here in a bit. This is Bloomberg.
This is a Bloomberg Pursuits look at luxury. If there's one thing the pandemic has taught us, having money makes life a whole lot easier. A British expat in Singapore has rented a swimming pool for $7,000 a month. So with his own condo's pool closed, he initially tried to lease an entire $21 million bungalow in Sentosa Cove, but the $21,000 a month rent was too much of a stretch. The real estate agent brokered a deal for just the amenity, a short golf cart ride away. Supercar maker McLaren will recall more than 2,700 whips, including its $1 million 789 horsepower Senna. A vibration-dampening foam pad under the fuel tank may cause corrosion and eventual leaks. In a sign of the times, the Oscars are relaxing 2020 eligibility requirements in a boost for streaming movies. Films that had previously planned cinema dates can debut online, but the Academy will revert back to old rules when theaters reopen. Visit BloombergPursuits.com for more. I'm Andrew O'Day, Bloomberg Radio.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their businesses strategically. Yet the most competitive managers in the market know with the right partner and a flexible operating system, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
Determination and operational strength are both essential factors for growth in asset management. I'm Steve Meyer, President and Head of SEI's Investment Manager Services Division. We know that disruptive forces create opportunities around the world. If you see potential in change, our industry specialists will maximize SEI's integrated platform of data and risk management, global investment operations, compliance support, and investor services to position your asset management business for success. Come grow with us.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/seize change.
Global news 24 hours.
Oh, just there, Dave. Smashing. Great. Really? Night, Steve. Yeah, see ya. Built to take the big knocks. Samsung rugged devices. Easy to use, hard to break. Explore the Samsung Rugged range.
The loungewear essentials that ease you into your comfort zone. The Fitbit that helps you step up your fitness goals. The yoga mat that turns your lounge into a studio. With a choice of ways to pay, you can enjoy being the best possible you. You can say yes when it matters most at very.co.uk. Goods and services provided by Shop Direct Home Shopping Limited. Credit provided by Shop Direct Finance Company Limited.
Dating can be tricky, especially when you can't meet face to face. So it's time to get creative with the easy way to replace physical dates, video call from Bumble, the dating app where women make the first move. Here's Anna Williamson and Tom Reed-Wilson with some tips on connecting online.
It's a bit harder to flirt with limited body language, but nothing beats a smile and some eye contact to show them you're interested.
And have an activity plan for your date. This will help break the ice.
Download Bumble today.
Today at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. U.S. and European stocks are slumping amid dire economic warnings, more dismal data, and corporate results that show the coronavirus's toll on businesses. Oil is extending a rebound after an early week tumble. Banks are leading the S&P 500 index lower as the latest U.S. unemployment figure showed a larger than expected jump in new benefit claims. And as European Central Bank President Christine Lagarde said the euro area economy could shrink 12% this year. Strong results from Microsoft, Facebook, and Tesla limiting losses on the tech-heavy NASDAQ. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. The S&P 500 is down 1%, down 29 points at 2910. The Dow Jones Industrial Average down 1.3% or 317 points at 24,311. And the NASDAQ is down 0.25%, down 20 points at 8894. 10-year Treasury up 10/30 seconds, yield 0.59%. The yield on the 2-year 0.18%. NYMEX crude oil is up more than 15%, up $2.29 at $17.35 a barrel. COMEX gold down 0.1% on $1.50 at $17.11.90 an ounce. The euro 1.0851 against the dollar. The yen 106.59. And taking a look at Microsoft, it's up 0.8% right now. Facebook up 6.7% and Tesla up more than 7%. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Tom and Paul.
Karen, thanks so much. Paul, I want to get to Craig Moffett and let you bring him in. It's going to be really, really important. But very quickly here, Mickey Levy is one of our great market economists. He writes a brilliant note on jobless claims. Paul, Florida ugly, California ugly, Georgia ugly, Washington State with the largest increase in claims. Encouragingly, initial claims declined in almost all states. Still with that, Mickey Levy looks for a most difficult set of 4 weeks in May. Paul?
Yeah, absolutely, Tom. Over 30 million jobs claims over the last 5 weeks. Just absolutely extraordinary. So, Tom, we're all staying indoors. We're quarantining. We're shut in. And we are consuming media more than ever. The question is, how do we kind of get it? The cable, the telecom companies, are we streaming? Just a whole host of issues for these big tech telecom media companies to deal with. And who better to chat about that than our good friend Craig Moffett, Moffett-Nathanson, founding partner and senior research analyst. Craig, thanks so much for joining us. Let's talk cable stocks first. We had some Comcast numbers out. Is the cable story, Craig, just, don't worry about the video subscribers. That business is going away. It's all about broadband?
Yeah. Hi. Good morning, Paul and Tom. Good to talk to you again. Yes, I think that's right. For the cable side of Comcast's business, broadband blew the doors off. I think all the things that you could have hoped for, which is that in this kind of a crisis, customers wanted higher speeds. They were willing to trade up to a better broadband connection for DSL customers and what have you, switching to cable. All that happened, and the results on the cable side of the business were very, very good. Losing video subscribers doesn't hurt them that much because those customers don't make them much money anyway. And so you saw margins rise to an all-time record. And if Comcast were a cable-only company, the results would have been terrific.
Craig, very quickly here, the gossip at AT&T. Mr. Stevenson, am I right? The board moved him out the door. Tell us about the M&A activity of AT&T and what Mr. Stanky can do to straighten this out fast.
Well, I can't comment. I don't have any insight into to the circumstances surrounding Randall's earlier than expected retirement. I would say that John Stanky, as his successor, is to some extent an endorsement of the status quo at AT&T, though. John was very much a co-architect of this quote-unquote new media company vision That is, you generate content and you distribute it over your own platforms. They've got it all under one roof. It hasn't worked so far, but this is clearly an endorsement of saying we're going to stay the course and try to keep trying here to make it work.
All right, so Craig, let's stay with AT&T here. From my recollection, the DirecTV acquisition, probably one of the worst deals I've ever seen. I guess the jury's still out on Time Warner. How much time does Mr. Stanky have to prove this concept correct?
Well, you're right. The DirecTV acquisition, I think, will go down in history as one of the worst ever.
Can you guys sugarcoat it?
$61 billion for an acquisition that today is just 5 years later is worth $20 billion or something, maybe. And you're right. Time Warner is in some ways very similar in that long-term structural challenges to these businesses. Now you're facing a lot of cyclical headwinds as well. But even leaving aside the COVID crisis, these are long-term structurally challenged businesses that they bought at extremely high valuations, and they're just riding them down. What makes this so difficult, though, is, as I said before, John Stanky was sort of the co-architect of this strategy. So it's not like you're bringing in an outsider to say, now let me change this business and see what I can make of it. This is an endorsement of saying he helped put it together. Completely changing directions probably would have just been too hard and too risky. And so they've changed leadership, but it is still very much the same strategy. I don't know what the ticking clock would say for how long you have to put it together. The obvious, or to right the ship, I think the obvious question is just, can you sustain the dividend? And right now it looks like probably yes, but if the recession goes on longer than people think, or if it's deeper than people think, then the leverage ratio at AT&T will rise quite substantially as EBITDA falls, and the rating agencies could very justifiably and conceivably demand a dividend cut in order to redirect cash flows to debt retirement instead. And that's the real risk, and that's the ticking clock at AT&T.
All right, Craig, just real quick, Verizon, 30 seconds. What's their strategy?
Well, Verizon right now is viewed as an impregnable defensive story, and that's not entirely wrong. There's nothing bad that's going to happen to their business relative to most businesses in this crisis, and they're doing fine. The problem is, before this crisis, they weren't growing. After this crisis, they won't be growing. And so they're an okay place to hide, but this is by no means one of those very few stories in the market that will emerge stronger. I don't think Verizon will emerge stronger. They'll sort of emerge the same.
Interesting. Craig Moffett, not enough time. We'll do it again. Craig Moffett with us, of course, with Moffett Nathanson this morning. Paul, absolutely extraordinary day. This is one of the most interesting days in a million years of doing this. Absolutely extraordinary.
And we say that a lot these days, Tom, because it's just the data coming out and the extraordinary. You just take today the jobless claims. You think about a number north of 30 million jobless claims over the last 5 weeks. Just extraordinary. You think about the consumer spending, the consumer confidence. So a lot of bleak economic data to kind of discount going forward.
Down negative 250 here. You got to stay with us, folks, through the day. Paul Sweeney, Lisa Bramwitz carried forward. And this afternoon, those important tech earnings. We are produced often by Richard Truman. This is Bloomberg.
Business is constantly evolving.
Introducing the new single, Impossible. From Central American rock and blues trio, Steady Rolling. Their epic story of love and loss continues. Download and stream the single, Impossible, from the band Steady Rolling, wherever good music lives.
Max is dreaming of riding a giant chameleon whilst fighting a clan of ninjas. But in reality, he's helping fight COVID-19 in his sleep. Like thousands of others, he's joined the Dream Team. By using the Dream Lab app, they're helping scientists speed up the search for potential treatments.
I'll fight you.
You go, Max. Search Vodafone DreamLab and join the Dream Team tonight.
DreamLab app is owned by Vodafone Foundation, an independent charity. Registration number 1089625. Full terms at vodafone.co.uk/dreamlab.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks to National Lottery players, communities across the country are about to benefit from up to £300 million of funding.
Thank you. Thank you.
Money that will help support the most vulnerable in these exceptional times.
Thank you. Thank you.
Food banks, local health organisations, charities combating loneliness, and thousands of other community causes will all get vital resources.
Thank you. Thank you.
And it's all thanks to you, playing the National Lottery. Your numbers make amazing happen.
This is an important message from the government. For now, we must all still stay at home. It can be hard, but it's making a difference. So please keep going for the ones you love. Keep going for every key worker on the front line as they keep going for us. Keep going because together we will beat the virus. To all of you making sacrifices every day, thank you. Stay home, protect the NHS, save lives.
With millions of podcasts dropping new episodes all the time, how do you keep up with all your favorites? TuneIn makes it easy. Simply head to the home screen and find your new episode section to see the latest additions.
Get your daily dose of NFL shop talk with these great podcasts on TuneIn. Start your morning off right with Around the NFL.
Injured, depleted roster into the playoffs, and I didn't think they belonged in the playoffs.
I think overall, though, it was a great divisional round weekend because you got the first one.
Run into the end zone with the Move the Sticks podcast.
We had a fun little Zoom cocktail hour last night.
Oh, yeah.
What a star-studded affair. Greg, you were there for the earlier part, but it really popped off a little later on. We had Zach Goldman.
And dive deep into the sidelines with the Peter King podcast.
On the occasion of his 50th birthday, come down and record a little bit of retrospective on the life and times of Brett Lorenzo Favre.
That sounds like a bestseller.
It sounds like a precursor of a funeral. That's what it is.
I wasn't thinking that.
Explore these and more hard-hitting NFL podcasts right here on TuneIn. Stay on top of everything happening in the pro wrestling universe with the Body Slamming podcasts on TuneIn. For passionate recaps of the most recent SmackDown to a pro wrestler's perspective on life and culture at large, search sports and scroll down to the world of wrestling to listen. Today at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney.
Is there any bank right now in the U.S. that you think is a buy?
Do you think Chairman Powell has lost the market?
Jeff Bezos is no dope. What's the big ka-ching?
The big question, I think, for investors is free cash flow.
Breaking market news and insight from Bloomberg experts.
The U.S. tariffs actually hurt both China and the U.S.
Large strategics are looking to either buy or invest in innovation.
Soybeans and corn have been basically at or below the cost of production for about 4 or 5 years.
So what we see more bonds, more yield.
This is Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
Good Thursday morning from New York City and points beyond to our worldwide audience. Coming up, we're going to chat with Nathan Sheets of PGIM Fixed Income to get a post-mortem on the Fed meeting yesterday and what it means for the economy. Plus, big oil reporting earnings. What can they do in the world of plummeting oil prices? But first, let's go to Greg Jarrett of Bloomberg News for a Bloomberg Business Flash. Greg, what do you have for us?
Well, we're down, Paul, here in the U.S. and in Europe. Stocks are slumping amid dire economic warnings, more dismal data and corporate results that show the virus's toll on businesses. Oil has extended its rebound after an early week tumble. We check the numbers every 15 minutes throughout the trading day. Right now, the S&P is down 0.5%, down 14. The Dow is down 0.7%, down 170. And the NASDAQ is up just a bit. It's really little change, but up 3. The 10-year is up 7/30 seconds with a yield of 0.6%. West Texas Intermediate crude oil is up 18% at $17.82 a barrel. COMEX gold is a little changed at $17.1380 an ounce. The dollar yen 106.58. The euro is $1.0855 and the British pound $1.2504. Millions of Americans filed for unemployment benefits last week, sending the 6-week total above 30 million since the pandemic began to shutter businesses across the country. Initial jobless claims totaled 3.84 million in the week ended April 25th, following 4.44 million last week. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. We now continue with Bloomberg Markets on Bloomberg Radio with Lisa and Paul.
Thank you so much, Greg. Jared, I do want to just bring you some news crossing the Bloomberg. The Fed releasing an announcement saying it's expanding the eligibility parameters for its Main Street lending program. This is the program that's being funded with seed money from the Treasury Department to extend loans to companies that perhaps don't necessarily qualify for the PPP program. And there's been some concern. Bill Dudley, in particular, ex-New York Fed president, came out with a Bloomberg opinion column yesterday talking about how difficult it is for the Fed to get this right, to basically entice the needy companies to borrow, but not necessarily the ones that aren't going to survive and just can't get financing anywhere else. And now they're expanding to bigger companies and also lowering the size of the potential loans. There's also some speculation this perhaps could have something to do with Treasury Secretary Stephen Mnuchin's comments to President Trump, at least reportedly, about some sort of emergency financing to the shale patch, to oil drillers in the United States. We'll bring you more with it as the day goes on. Right now, in markets, we are seeing that decline, except for in the big tech names. Dave Wilson, Bloomberg Stocks editor, joining us now to talk a little bit about the incredibly terrible economic data. I mean, the jobless claims cannot be sort of overstated in any way. The idea that 30 million people have lost their jobs in the past 6 weeks, 10 years of job gains wiped out. Dave, is the market responding to this?
I would say to an extent it is. I mean, you see it in some of the consumer-related shares. After companies came out with earnings, their stock moved up. Now it's lower. We're talking about the likes of Kraft Heinz, down about 2% at the moment. And, of course, this is one of the companies that benefited from stockpiling as consumers are kind of laying in supplies for the coronavirus pandemic. That's one that jumps out. eBay's off a bit, and there's been an increase in business there in the online marketplace. As Amazon has had its issues with fulfilling orders, and more people have been at home and not wanting to go out to buy items. So there's concern that that's going to be short-lived. Comcast is another one that jumps out. The shares are down about 4%. Even though, let's face it, we're all at home. We all need internet access, and that company has been a real beneficiary. First quarter growth in subscribers was the biggest in 12 years. Just the other side of that is, they're hurting in their film business, their theme park business. People are cutting the cord when it comes to cable, and so, you put that all together, it's an offset. So really, beyond that, what's interesting is just sort of, as you mentioned, the big tech companies or tech-related companies doing well in early trading, and a whole lot of other stocks not.
Yeah, Dave, it's interesting. Facebook, I was looking at their numbers from last night. The stock's up about almost 6% today. Had a pretty good quarter going into the pandemic, and then they saw some real weakness in their advertising spending, I guess, in the later part of March, although maybe a little bit of stability in April. That seems like, a pretty better than expected kind of outlook, perhaps.
Yeah, and it's an interesting kind of contrast with Twitter. Because Twitter's earnings were out today, and initially people liked what they saw. And then the company talked about how, what they're seeing in April in terms of advertising is similar to what they saw in the second half of March when ad revenue was down 27%. Twitter shares are down 3.5%. Facebook, one of the biggest gains in the S&P 500 right now, up 5.7%. So real contrast there. And I suppose it comes down to, if you're going to spend money on digital ads, where are you going to spend it? Maybe Facebook stays in the ad budget, where if you're going to spend money on Twitter, not so much.
Well, if we want to extrapolate out, we've been talking the past few days about how small caps have actually been leading a rebound among non-tech names, sort of suggesting or hinting that perhaps we could see a broader recovery. Today, that's the opposite. They're underperforming yet again, and I'm wondering whether we can basically say we're back to square one with tech leading and everything else lagging behind as it reflects the real economy.
Well, we are for the moment. Now, whether that holds up, who knows? We have seen a whole lot of back and forth on that score. But you're right about the smaller companies. And let's face it, even 3 days did not necessarily a change in trend make. So, the idea that people were just going to move into the smaller companies after years of shunning them, maybe it's not quite so big a deal at this point.
Look, it wasn't just me. There are other people, too, that were trying to point to that as sort of a silver lining.
Oh, no, absolutely. I mean, no argument there. And, in fact, the Russell's still up a couple of percentage points more for the quarter than the S&P 500, up 15% so far for the Russell. And so, I mean, it's still hanging on to a better performance.
Dave, is there anything that you need to mention before we do dad joke?
As far as what?
The markets go? Anything relevant?
Well, I mean, it's a hard one to kind of get your head around to some extent because, it is a pretty broad-based decline at the moment. But, you look at the kinds of companies, Twitter, not doing so well, but Facebook and Alphabet, communication services are up. Consumer discretionary, that's Amazon. We're going to have their results after the close of trading along with Apple's, and those are going to be a couple of companies to watch here.
Yeah, I got to say, I do defer to the dad joke really on a day like today with such sobering economic data. And I really want to underscore, just the pain being felt. And that's one reason why everybody needs a little bit of a release. And so that said, I've been getting tons and tons of submissions, and they're wonderful. And I laugh at every single one. Here's one that might be apropos of the markets today. How do you become a successful baker?
How do you become a successful baker?
Buy dough, sell pie.
I like that one.
Cute. It's cute.
I'm going with it.
All right. And then I'll give you this, a one-liner
from
somebody, a bonus, just because they're all so great. The Energizer Bunny was arrested today. They charged him with battery. Oh, rimshot.
That is a classic dad joke.
Dave is just quiet there. What's the silence?
At some point, you just got to let the jokes settle. That's all.
If you want to submit yours, I'm at Lisa Abramowitz1 or Lisa Labramowitz at Bloomberg.net. I'm losing track of all these things. It's sort of like passwords, especially when everyone's ordering online.
Right.
Do you lose all your passwords? I don't know how people collect them. Anyway, I digress. We are seeing a weaker markets across the board, a bid into treasuries as people reflect on the dire situation in the economy. Dave Wilson, Bloomberg Stocks Editor, thank you so much. Right now, let's shift the gears and go to 99.1 Studios in Washington, D.C. Nathan Hager. Nathan.
Lisa, New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy says he's going to take his plea for financial assistance from the federal government directly to President Trump. The governor spoke with Fox News before he heads to the Oval Office this morning. Murphy says he wouldn't call it a bailout, but he does say his state needs more help to keep teachers, police, and firefighters paid during the pandemic. The U.S. death toll from COVID-19 is now past 60,000, and more states are taking steps to reopen their economies. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi tells CNN governors should let evidence drive their decisions.
I believe that we have to have a path that is about testing so that there's confidence for people when certain opportunities open up.
Pelosi says, yes, indeed, states will get more federal aid. She says the $500 billion they're looking for would be spread out over several years. FDA Commissioner Stephen Hahn tells Bloomberg his agency is moving at lightning speed to review the data on Gilead's experimental COVID drug. Dr. Anthony Fauci released results yesterday showing patients on remdesivir recovered from COVID-19 in 11 days compared to 15 on placebo. In the UK, AstraZeneca is in the running to develop a vaccine. Bloomberg's Leanne Gerrans reports the drug maker's teaming with Oxford on the effort.
Oxford is already in early clinical tests. It's tried the experimental shot on 320 patients so far. Now, AstraZeneca is joining in development to add scale and manufacturing prowess to the effort. So far, it's one of the most advanced vaccine projects, entering the human testing phase last week. It's scheduled to reach late-stage trials by mid-year. In London, I'm Leanne Gerrans, Bloomberg Radio.
Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. This is Bloomberg.
Why can't you just go to some remote island and wait till all this is over?
The range of outcomes is so wide.
Because it's your job.
What do you think some of the structural changes might result?
Fortunately, it's our job too.
How's value done in this market?
Paul Sweeney and Lisa Abramowitz.
It's very hard to make a forecast.
Bloomberg Markets.
This could be a lower for longer type of hit.
Weekday mornings at 10 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
There are everyday actions to help prevent the spread of respiratory diseases. Wash your hands. Avoid close contact with people who are sick. Avoid touching your eyes, nose, and mouth. Stay home when you are sick. Cover your cough or sneeze. Clean and disinfect frequently touched objects with household cleaning spray. For more information, visit cdc.gov/COVID-19. This message brought to you by the National Association of Broadcasters and this station.
If knowledge is power, the Bloomberg Terminal is your power up, connecting you to real-time financial data, market-moving news, powerful analytics, and an influential network of financial decision makers around the world. Share ideas, negotiate trades, and gain the insight you need to make more informed decisions. See how the terminal can take your workflow to the next level at Bloomberg.com/professional.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have arrived in Philadelphia. Local time is 3:05 p.m. and the temperature is 67 degrees. At this time, you are now free to use your cellular devices.
You know that feeling when you get to turn your phone on after